580-5436, 580-KIDO. To those of you that listen to us day in and day out on the podcast, we appreciate you listening. And if you miss any portion of the program, like yesterday, just a huge program with the Secretary of State, Phil McGrain, Dave Petso, or earlier in the week, Lars Larson or Theo Wold, you can always go to YouTube. That's right, YouTube. Believe it or not, what is it? More and more people are getting their news and information from the YouTube. And all of a sudden, we were on YouTube and then we were off YouTube. Now we're back on YouTube, which is quite fascinating. I want to thank the Godless Corporation for giving us another avenue of distribution. Now more than ever, when you think about the news and the commentary and everything else, it's important to have multiple streams of distribution. Of course, we are very blessed to be on 580 AM, 107.5 FM, and the free, and we do mean free when it works, the KIDO Talk Radio app. And when we talk about just appreciating what we have here in this great country, there used to be a hidden, what should we say, a hidden curtain, if you will, between news and commentary. And what the liberals used to do is that the liberals would, in fact, say, well, news is news and commentary is commentary. And never shall the two meet. And what would happen would be when we didn't have the Facebook, when we didn't have the Twitter, when we didn't have all these other interesting means and alternative means of distribution, they could get away with that. They could do this again and again and again, and we had no way of fighting back until probably around the mid-'80s. Now, there were some stations across the country that actually partook in this format, talk radio, but never to the level that it was, during the Fairness Doctrine, because you had the Fairness Doctrine, and the Fairness Doctrine would mean that when we had a conservative on, you would have to have a liberal on, and vice versa, and everything else. And it really didn't go anywhere. It was really much like in the early days, the old show Crossfire, which I'm going to go to the YouTube machine, which we're on, and I'm going to take a look and see if I can find some of the old Crossfire shows with Pat Buchanan and Bob Novak. And you should Google these people if you ever want to. And I know, we are not very. Sometimes we don't embrace the education system, and in some places it's become woke. There's no doubt about it. And there are people that have educated themselves. You listen during Clay and Buck, 10 to 1 here on KIDO Talk Radio. They're advertising Hillsdale College. And God bless Hillsdale College, a lot of free programs to educate yourself. God rest his soul, Lou Dobbs, the Idahoan, the great liberator, the Harvard-educated, was he an attorney or an economist? Same thing? All right. Talked about public education and education in general being the great liberator of our society. And he's right about that. And you can go to YouTube and you can find fascinating debates, and even former New Hampshire governor, former chief of staff of the Bush White House, John Sununu, on Crossfire. And these guys would go at it. But you know something? It was about principle. It was about conservatism. It was about liberals. And it wasn't one side. It was back and forth. And who would get the last word? It was really an egalitarian half hour of something we call television. And today, we have the left-wing network that is blaming Donald Trump for getting shot at. By the way, shame on NBC News. And I know the good folks at Channel 7. Kevin, you're picking on Channel 7 again. And they only have to read the copy. But, man, is there not somebody with a brain in their head? And the reason why I say this is because no one's going to hold people accountable. And you know something? If the act runs stale and you don't like, or the powers that be say, we don't like you holding people accountable because it's not about being nice, then so be it. But there's nothing wrong with pointing things out. It's not an apparent assassination attempt. It's an assassination attempt. And believe me, that was the line from NBC News. And again, nothing against the folks at Channel 7. I guess they just read the clip. But the lack, and this is where we're going, the lack of critical thinking skills where we're delving into this thing, and it's not an apparent assassination attempt. And the liberals, through the news media, are blaming Donald Trump for almost getting himself killed not once but twice. And when you have Joe Biden and Kamala going on and on about the threats to democracy and everything else, well, of course, then people, deranged people, are going to take, sadly, matters into their own hands. You know, it cost an innocent father, husband, his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. And, you know, I know people are still reeling from Jim Byrne being in town, the attorney, the advocate, the former chairman of the Democratic Party of Pennsylvania. But one thing I do need to get with him on is, you know, talking about Butler, Pennsylvania. What happened there? But do you believe that they're actually blaming Donald Trump for this? And now, believe it or not, we have people that are saying that in this country, that if you're talking about conservatism, that you should be arrested.
And boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
That's Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is a spurned lover. I know this is a family-friendly show, but we say this not in the way of, how should we put this? Not in the way of being provocative, but in the way of being sarcastic, a parody. You ever been spurned by your lover? Nobody likes to be spurned by your lover. And when we're talking about Hillary Clinton's lover, we're talking about the American electorate. They didn't choose her in 2008. They didn't choose her in 2016. By the way, there's always somebody younger. There's always somebody more articulate. There's always somebody better looking. And that's why, you know, we seek salvation through our faith in God, in the Lord, Jesus Christ, as opposed to the material things on God's green earth, which takes us a long time to figure out. And you could be consumed by that, and it will destroy you within. And we hear that with Hillary Clinton, where she's saying, you know, guys, this is bad. If you speak out against the nanny state, if you speak out against the deep state, we're going to come after you civilly now. So sites like the Daily Caller, sites like the Daily Wire could be sued. Well, Kevin, they have a lot of money. Ben Shapiro's a multimillionaire. Tucker Carlson's rich. And they can defend themselves in court. Yeah, you can do anything in court. They call it the Gilded Age of litigation. You can sue anybody, and you get tied up in court costs. And then when you're tied up in court costs and your resources are being used to defend yourself against frivolous lawsuits, well, then the truth doesn't come out. Now, do some people go too far? Yes. Look, I worry day in and day out about the future of this format. And we take nothing for granted here because people are very worried about the mob, the media mob, as Sean Hannity calls it, 1 to 4 here on KIDO Talk Radio, or anything else. Because it would be very easy to go, we're going to go to news. Hello, news. Well, I'm Harvey Burtenden, and let's say the Fed is going to cut its interest rates today, and we're going to find out the mood on the street. Let's go to Sally in Sutherland. Oh, I just hope I can buy a home because I really like the home, and I'd like a new Obama phone. Thank you, Sally. Let's go to the weather. High today of 65 with chance of showers. And we lose critical thinking. And that's what we're seeing right now. Critical thinking being eroded by the video, by the idea that you have a former Secretary of State, a former Democratic nominee, not once but twice, thanks Obama, but you have a former junior senator of New York advocating for civil or criminal penalties on speech and possibly jailing Americans for posting misinformation. Hey, was the Russian collusion diffusion misinformation? Yeah. Wasn't it? Who was the prosecutor for that one? Liberal Steve chimes in. You should be jailed, Kevin Miller. Okay, I'm doing a literal license here. Of what he says. He says, you should be jailed for that. Let's go to Paulie in Nampa with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Paulie.
I think the name you were looking for, good morning, Kevin. I think the name you were looking for was Dan Goldbricker. Dan Goldman.
Dan Goldman, long time ago.
Yeah, he was the one. He's still in about. He has all his Levi's made in China, so he's vested in making his money there, not here, like a proud American should be. But then again, I guess you're not a proud American if you're going to be working for the commies. So that's enough for Dan. I'll give him another plug tomorrow, maybe. Did you happen to catch the news? I know that's part of your job. Did you happen to catch what happened in Lebanon?
Oh, the pagers blowing up?
Yeah. That's one way to transition a terrorist.
Yeah.
That was bad news. And, the Israelis haven't said word one about that. And they're not going to either. They get the last laugh without laughing out loud.
You're right about that. And, don't mess with the Israelis.
No. The Mossad doesn't play games. They play to win.
Well, and you have to wonder if they could do that to pagers, what they can do to phones and everything else.
Yeah. The phone that I'm talking on right now could self-destruct in 5 seconds, Mr. Phelps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's awfully early, Kev. How are you doing today?
I'm okay, Paulie. Have you run out of topics?
No, I'm curious. I didn't get to finish what I was talking to you about yesterday because I didn't know how much time I had left. I knew it was like 3 minutes on the thing when I called you. But I did want to talk a little bit more about service and prayer. They go hand in hand, and you find that when you're not necessarily your company, but when the interest you have is in something like the Bill Roscoe's deal that he has
the Rescue
started.
Mission, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when you pray for help for that, it generally comes. May not come in large chunks, but it gets there. And I noticed that I missed the tent.
Well, I'll say this, that we're doing our very best to expand that footprint when we're looking at this. We've got some folks on from Camp Rainbow Gold coming up on Friday. There are so many people that do such good works that work in quiet anonymity that make a difference. Absolutely. And that need help. And there are a lot of people with money and resources and time that can help. So that's part of our mission. I want to say we strayed away from it. It's just been, we live in extraordinary times. We've had 2 assassination attempts. We've had a president that decided not to run for re-election after he was the party nominee. We have an unknown person from California. This just never, and hopefully will never happen again in our history. It's just, how do you not focus in on the news of the day, if you will? Yeah, and another thing I wanted to mention was the fact that Benito Mussolini, Mayorkas, decided to give Trump some much needed more help in the Secret Service area. I don't know how much, I don't know how many, and they're not going to tell us, Joes in the public. They're just going to add to what they think is necessary here or there. The one thing I was a proponent of right after the first one, and just prior to the first attempt on Trump, was he plays a lot of golf, and he's a target, and there's millions and millions and millions and millions of high-powered rifles that could take him out. And I'm not here to want to take your guns away. Keep getting more guns is what I say. But he needs protection when he's in the golf cart, and he needs to have bulletproof glass if it takes. That's what it takes. That's what he needs around it, and it needs to be done ASAP because these people are hell bent for leather to want to kill him. And that's the second one. And I heard somebody say something really bad on the radio yesterday that the third time is a charm. And that really pissed me off, I got to admit. And so, if he's just going to be sitting in a golf cart, he's an easy target. But if he's got bulletproof glass around that, and the top, and the sides, and the back,
and the Secret Service is able to do what they need to do on foot and have their own bulletproof vehicle out there. I say more power to it, and they need at least two of them.
Right. But Paulie, it comes down to this: where is the overwhelming force? And unfortunately, we don't really see that. Paulie, I got to run. Thank you for the call. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller on Idaho's talk station, KIDO Talk Radio. If you didn't hear me talk about it last week, I want to tell you again about the amazing low payment lease deals at Team Mazda this month. Did you know the Mazda CX-50 midsize SUV is a fairly new model, and it's Goldilocks size, not too big and not too small, but just right for hauling family, groceries, gear, and pets. It's also all-wheel drive, so you're set for the winter driving. Remember, thankfully, the triple digits are over, so what does that mean for us in Idaho? Get ready for the snow, and for those of you that are adventurous, like our friend Bo, that love to ski and all sorts of craziness, you got to have a safe, reliable vehicle to get you where you need to go. So right now, you can get a Mazda CX-50 at Team Mazda for only $253 a month. That's right, $253 a month to lease a new Mazda CX-50. The Mazda CX-30 now, it's slightly smaller than the CX-30, but it's one of the highest rated small SUVs on the market. And get this, it's super fun to drive. The payment at Team Mazda on a CX-30 is only $202 a month. That's right, that's like 4 meals, if you will. Make sure you tell them you heard it from Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. Lease a brand new Mazda CX-30 for only $202 a month. Aaron and Joel, they roll at Team Mazda this week and every week. Those guys know how to help you drive a new Mazda at the lowest payment possible. Team Mazda in the pre-owned superstore on the boulevard or online at goteammazda.com. Please tell them Kevin Miller sent you. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Talking a lot about free speech this morning. And oh, by the way, it's Wednesday, which means college football just around the corner. And Boise State will be opening up against Portland State. That'll be at 8 o'clock on the Blue. Listen this week, Clay and Buck, we have a pair of tickets to give you. And Clay and Buck will be giving those away. So we'll tell you when and where coming up between now and Friday on KIDO Talk Radio. So a lot of people are from Ohio. Ohio, they say it's, first in flight or the birth of aviation. But I always like to say Ohio, where all good things come from. A lot of good people from Ohio. So Ohio State has a big game this week. And if you've been in business, if you've been involved in athletics, right? Let's say and I did this as a young person. I coached, and I don't really want to say I was a coach. Coach. I was coach of my brother's indoor soccer team when my dad couldn't do it. I was like the assistant to the assistant. And basically it was shuffling players in and out, and these kids were great kids. And, when you're involved in youth sports, hopefully there's a level playing field. And whether it's high school athletics, whether it's middle school athletics, there are people that spend a lot of money on things. On programs, on, new cleats, new this, new that. So some people have more resources than others. And in business, let's say your company has XYZ, but the other company has, every letter in the alphabet. So you have to work harder, or vice versa. Some people get company cars, some people get to write off mileage. You know what I'm saying? So there are more resources. So this is how challenging it's gotten in college football. And hopefully I've given you enough analogies that it's not all about sports, but there are teams that have to play big money games. Like Idaho had to play Oregon. And the University of Idaho, they got, I think $800,000 to play the University of Oregon. Well, University of Oregon scheduled these teams, and hopefully that Oregon will beat them. Now, Wyoming lost to Idaho, so Idaho not only played Wyoming, beat them for the first time in 100 years, but also got paid for it. Portland State is getting paid to come in to play Boise State. Marshall in West Virginia is coming in is going into Ohio State, and they're going to get paid. Well, Charlie Huff, who's a pretty good coach, decided to take to social media. Actually, it was a good old Brett McMurphy, and just to have a little fun at Ohio State. So you're talking about getting paid between $100,000 and $300,000, $400,000. Even some players are getting millions of dollars to play amateur college football. So here's the coach at Marshall.
Some of those guys from Ohio State too. So if they want to transfer on down, we've got a Tudor's Biscuit NIL, all you can eat. So if any of those guys that run really, really fast at Ohio State like Tudor's Biscuits, I promise you, all you can eat all day if you transfer here. So, but yeah.
A great point. Now, putting into contrast between the two teams, while Marshall's priding itself on all-you-can-eat biscuits, Ohio State is getting around $20 million in name, image, and likeness money. Now, that's not the most. I think the most is Florida and Texas or LSU, but, it's just become a money game. And I suppose it's always been a money game. So Portland State will get some money. Hopefully the Broncos will win. Hopefully you'll win those tickets by listening to Clay and Buck on KIDO Talk Radio. But it just shows you the idea. And it's not just sports. Again, I'm always inspired by that. These teams like Idaho that got a lot of good publicity that don't have all of the fancy gimmicks, if you will. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Time to get you to work safely and on time. Dave Burnett is standing by that we would be battling for speech in America today. And is it really possible to go too far? Earlier yesterday at the White House, courtesy of our friends at the Media Research Center, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Claude Van Damme lectured the intrepid Peter Doocy on what is and what isn't acceptable at the White House.
Since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again, and you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat. How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Peter, if anything from this administration, I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question, the question that you're asking. It is also incredibly dangerous in the way that you're asking it, because American people are watching. And to say that from an administration who has consistently condemned political violence, from an administration where the president called the former president and was grateful that he was okay, from an administration who has called out January 6th, called out the attack of Paul Pelosi, called out and said we need to lower the temperature after the Butler incident, and now for you to make that kind of comment in your question, because your question involved a comment and a statement. And, it is, that is also incredibly dangerous.
So a comment and a statement is very dangerous. So the deranged lunatic did not kill the former president of the United States. And in battleground polls, the guy who's leading. And because Kamala and Joe said, gee, sorry, didn't get you, Mr. President. We're supposed to be led to believe that when they call him a threat, when they call him Hitler, when somebody, a congresswoman on MSNBC yesterday had a Freudian slip and said he needs to be shot and then caught herself saying stopped. I don't think this happens, and maybe it does. And the older you get, the more bias we seem to have. But the older we get, the old people are the ones that are stable. And it's the young people that fly off the handle. You, youngster, you. Not you, Sweet William. You're not young at all. But you fly off the handle. And what we're seeing here is a lot of people that have been fed a lot of disinformation. And I will tell you that if you watch Newsmax all day or Fox News all day and there is no perspective, it can scare the heck out of you. Now, I'm not saying go lib. I'm not saying get yourself some of that Rachel Maddow or Nicole Wallace. But like everything, you have to have perspective. Every day, I pray to God. And where I got this idea from was a young lady that came into the studio. And I said, famous actress. And I said to her, I go, what do you pray for? The gift of discernment. The ability to determine things. And the gift of perspective and empathy. And when we have those gifts, and when we don't lose perspective, our life is a lot better. Now, here we have, and whether it was Jesse Waters or Clay and Buck or Sean Hannity, that broke down, this guy was traveling all over the world. He was getting guns. He was on the watch list, and he still got within 100, 350 yards of, attempting to kill Donald Trump. And she's calling Peter Doocy dangerous? And this is coming from the White House? At 580-5436-580-KIDO, this is what the liberals are trying to do. They're trying to take away not only conservative speech, but accountability speech. We were taught by our founding fathers, my daddy, Alexander Hamilton, daddy, and it was all about holding those in power accountable. And people are breaking this down, but okay, I guess there's a big fence and the guy just hung out in a tree and he was there for 12 hours and nobody picked him up. Now maybe and Lee Joe's going, you're darn right, Kevin Miller, you do. Ha 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 ha. Maybe I just put too much trust in authority, but I'm thinking if the president's there, the former president's there, they sweep that area. And they start sweeping it, and they secure it, but you're telling me no, it's just a rim of people, and thankfully the guy got lucky. Well, what happens if he didn't? And look, whether in Idaho, we're very nice, and God bless Idaho for being nice. But, anywhere else, you're either incompetent or complicit. And what happens if that guy doesn't get, I mean, you talk about, and again, there are a lot of people, and maybe they get uncomfortable with me talking about it. Maybe they don't. Look, you just have to follow your faith. And you have to live up to that. You can't be a hypocrite. But at 580-5436-580-KIDO, you have to sit there and say to yourself, did I do everything? And we've lived in such a TikTok world, an instant gratification world. Let's go back to the first assassination attempt. If he doesn't turn his head, we don't have President Trump. We probably don't even have J.D. Vance. I don't know who we have. If the guy doesn't turn his head, and has anybody been fired for that? Okay, let's move on to the next one. So we didn't learn our lesson, and instead of, and look, I've been in meetings, and maybe it's because, again, I was raised by a military father, or I went to the military, which I was a lousy troop, but there are times when you just shut up and listen. And you're telling me that the director of the Secret Service, he did a whining thing. We played that for you a couple days ago. Well, we're stretched thin. No, not everybody can be in the Secret Service. There is no reason that this ever happened again unless you're complicit. And I don't want to say that. What's worse, they just turn the blind eye. They're stretched too thin. They have $3 billion in funding and you don't have enough people. Okay, where does the buck stop? You can't blame that on Donald Trump. You got to blame it on the people running the place. And for Karine Jean-Pierre to go after Peter Doocy for saying the obvious things is just crazy.
Since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again, and you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat. How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Peter, if anything, from this administration. I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question, the question that you're asking. It is also incredibly dangerous in the way that you're asking it, because American people are watching. And to say that from an administration who has consistently condemned political violence, from an administration where the president called the former president and was thankful, grateful that he was okay, from an administration who has called out January 6th, called out the attack of Paul Pelosi, called out and said we need to lower the temperature after the Butler incident, and now for you to make that kind of comment in your question, because your question involved a comment and a statement. And, it is, that is also incredibly dangerous.
Right. A comment and a statement. And you're telling me the liberals don't do the same? The liberals haven't gone on and attacking Donald Trump and saying that he's the worst person ever? That he's the bad guy? That he's the person that really should be held accountable, Donald Trump? And you have everybody else, Biden, this, that, and the other. We'll get you some clips of this in a minute. But, one of the toughest things that you have to do, and you do this every day, and I admire you for it so much, that you have to look in the mirror and say, it ain't them, it's me. And then you have to make changes in your life. The people that are addicts, and we don't give them enough credit, that say, God, please help me. And that reform their lives. We take it for granted the good works of the Boise Rescue Mission, St. Vincent de Paul, and so many others. When we hear these inspiring stories during Miller's Mission and other times, that we think to ourselves, oh, it's easy. It's not easy. And it's not easy. I mean, when's the last time a politician admitted that they were wrong? When's the last time that they said we made a mistake? Now, I will tell you, this guy is not a Donald Trump fan. This is Senator Richard Blumenthal, who's talking about the Department of Homeland Security and says there's problems here.
I am reaching the point of total outrage because the response from the Department of Homeland Security has been totally lacking. In fact, I think it's tantamount to stonewalling in many respects. If necessary, I'll certainly support a subpoena.
And this is a Democrat, a leading Democrat saying this. Hey, folks, do want to remind you, Sean Hannity today at 1, right after Clay and Buck, right before Lars Larson. Keep it here. We're talking and listening to you, Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO Talk Radio. Waking up on the right side. This is the Sean Hannity Morning Minute.
She said, day one, we're going to fight inflation and immigration. Day one was January 20th, 2021. What do you mean on day one? And then for 3 years, she lied about inflation, that it was transitory, lied about immigration, said the border was secure. And said, well, we haven't been to the border, called out by Lester Holt. Well, I haven't been to Europe either. She's now on record saying she will raise the corporate taxes, small business taxes, will put in a wealth tax and a state tax, capital gains taxes to unprecedented rates that'll destroy investment in this country. Even Mark Cuban recognizes that. Unrealized capital gains. That would be a depression for this country.
From coast to coast, from sea to shining sea, it's the Sean Hannity Show.
Firearms, they're a great protection. But as a gun owner, you got to consider firearms as a last resort. Do you really want to pull the trigger and then deal with the financial, mental repercussions? The answer has to be no. You need to start with the less lethal option. That's Byrna, B-Y-R-N-A. Now, the Byrna less lethal pistol launcher was designed by gun owners because Byrna wants to save lives while also creating a product that confidently protects those concerned with personal safety. The burner pistol launcher is equipped with powerful deterrents, tear gas, kinetic rounds, and it has a 50 to 60 foot range. It's amazing. And the burner launcher can incapacitate an attacker for 30 to 40 minutes. Now, the burner launcher is legal in all 50 states. There's no background check needed. There's no permit needed. And they'll ship it directly to your door. Now, don't start with deadly force. Start with less lethal force. Go to byrna.com/Hannity. 10% off any purchase. That's byrna.com/Hannity and make the smart choice for your family's safety today.
Let's go to Glenn in Nampa with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Glenn.
Good morning, Kevin. As you were talking about the attempt on Trump's life at the golf course, I just had this thought. From the narrative, he sat there in the bushes for 12 hours. And then when they tried to catch him, he ran and got in his car and drove away. How come nobody noticed his car parked somewhere near the golf course for 12 hours?
Oh, that's a great point. How come somebody, if it hadn't been for a witness, this guy might have gotten away?
Yeah, exactly. And just, you would think they would sweep the whole golf course first before letting them on it, not just sweeping it one hole ahead. But, what do I know? I'm just a plumber, I don't know anything about security, but some of this just seems like they were lackadaisical. And it's funny, you played that clip from KJP talking about Peter Ducey, and, they're like, oh, we need to tone down the rhetoric. Yet they're still saying that Trump is an existential threat. The comments that you see on Twitter, there's people all over the place comparing Trump to Hitler. And, words have consequences. There was a clip from an interview I saw this morning where Kamala was talking about how Trump has a platform and he needs to be careful with his words about talking about people eating cats and dogs and how that's causing all this bad stuff to happen in Springfield, Ohio, yet it's perfectly acceptable for her and Tampon Tim to say that Trump is an existential threat to our democracy. I mean, they're predicting that our country's going to end if Trump gets elected. And I understand both sides say that. But apparently the people on the right understand that it's a little bit of hyperbole and don't take it seriously, where those on the left seem to take it seriously and act on it. They've acted on it at least twice. And you have to not forget, too, that there was actually that third attempt where they caught that guy from Iran that was trying to put together a hit team to take out Trump. So, in actuality, he survived 3 assassination attempts.
And yet, here we have the attack on speech. Glenn, you could be prosecuted. You could be criminally liable. And I'm trying to think of, a lot of people say it was the Patriot Act, but I think it more had to do with the pandemic. We're seeing a shift towards totalitarianism in our country.
Oh, we definitely saw it with the pandemic, with media outlets or social media sanctioning people. I mean, I got banned off of TikTok for posting links to the CDC website that showed that the government was lying. You could go right to the information that the CDC had their website, and it contradicted what the talking heads were telling us. Yet I was spreading misinformation. I don't get that. I'm just pointing.
Let me jump in for a second. One of the things I'm most proudest of is that we stayed on the air during the pandemic, number one. And number two, let's just take a look at how the local media let those nurses down. They covered the story once.
Nurses down.
They covered the story once, and then they just moved on.
Yep. I was there. You were there. We were at the protest. We were trying to support the nurses and try to bring light to the situation that they were causing. And here they go with the vaccine mandate and then they fire a bunch of nurses because they wouldn't follow the mandate. And then it was 6 months later where you had them declare basically a state of emergency because they didn't have enough healthcare workers.
Well, and here's the other deal. There are still not a lot of enough healthcare workers.
No, they haven't come back. How many people left the military because they didn't want to take the jab or were forced out because they didn't take the jab? And now look at what the recruitment levels are. We can't even fully staff our military. And, you know, this is something we see every day. There's a war of information. And it's unfortunate that we feel that we can't trust the media outlets because you see CNN, these other people that have covered up Biden's decline for years and tell us there's nothing to see here and that we're crazy. And then he finally on the debate stage proves that he's incompetent and they can't cover it up anymore and they get rid of him. But we're in this war of information. Who do we trust? How do we know what we're hearing is true? And then they're trying to talk about sanctioning people that could be spreading misinformation. And you brought it up earlier. Here you have Hillary, who's probably the biggest spreader of misinformation of all time, with the dirty dossier on Trump. They paid for that and then leaked it to the media to try to smear him. The whole Russian collusion thing, which was proved to be false and made up. It just, Kevin, how do you know what's true? That's the biggest question. How do you know?
Well, it's called, I mean, you're a critical thinker. What I worry about, and I don't want to bag on the young people, but it's like video this, video that. And I'm like, hey, man, videos are great. However, you got to read a book. Now, Glenn, I buy a lot of books and I have a ton of them and I need to read them. But even if if you read a long article, it does more for your cognitive development than watching, an hour video or something of that nature,
Yeah. And if I see something pop up on my Twitter feed, I'm not going to call it X. It's always going to be Twitter. That seems unreal. I start trying to do research that I can. Did this happen? Start doing Google or whatever search engine and try to see if there's other things that back up that story. I don't just take it at first glance and start sharing it. I try to do what I can through my limited means to find out, is this real or is this fake? And I guess that's what you have to do. And then you have to, some ways, follow your gut.
Glenn, I got to run, but thank you.
What's true. So thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Much more coming up. Don't forget our great friends, Clay and Buck, today at 10, KIDO Talk Radio. Gregory, about a very important cause. It's called the Idaho History of Broadcast Foundation. And you need to support the foundation. And this honors all the great broadcasters that entertained you as little kids or big kids, or maybe you didn't grow up in Idaho, but you tuned in and you go, well, what's the culture? What's the history? Give me something, K. Millie. By the way, that's with the letter K, not the word K, for those people that think I'm transitioning. However, let me just say this. Art and Steve, we look forward to helping out the foundation, to making a difference. They're building it out in Nampa. They've got the building, the old KFXT building. And when you hear the passion and the history of Idaho television and radio broadcasting, we hope it inspires you to help out those guys. They're next. More coming up. We're just getting started. Mike Tracy, 8 o'clock hour. We're rolling. Stay with us. Good morning. A very important organization that really honors the history of the legacy of radio and radio here in Idaho. So, Steve, Art, thank you for joining us.
Oh, you bet. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
And the great, be here. And Art, we love you. We love Steve. And one of the great things about having two pros here is that I don't really have to do much. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about the foundation.
The foundation. Well, Art is certainly the one to ask because I came with the foundation about 4 or 5 years ago, but Art is actually the founder of it. So I'm going to turn the mic over to him for a minute so that he can tell you how the foundation came about and what it does.
See, they've already marginalized me on my own show, which is great, and that's the sign of true broadcast professionals. By the way, Art has written a book on KIDO. You can get that at local bookstores. You can get it at Albertsons. And that shows you his love and dedication for this station. Not only radio, and look, we love radio, and Steve, we love television.
Of course.
However, KIDO. Art, please take it away.
Yes, KIDO actually invented broadcasting in the state of Idaho. The radio station that is now KIDO started in 1919 as a experimental radio station at Boise High School. Then in 1920, they became licensed with an experimental station that was called 7YA. And it was kind of interesting. They had call letters that were set up alphabetically with the letters of the alphabet, and 7 was the district, Y was the classification of a technical or trade school, and A was the first letter of the alphabet, indicating that was the first station that was granted. And I don't know what happened, Kevin, when they got to 26. I guess they had to do 7YAA. But that's kind of how 4 call letters ended up coming into play, because the original call letters were just 3, and then they ran out of combinations pretty quickly. Idaho never had any 3 call letter signs except KID, and they got that later on. That's a long story. But anyway, KIDO, the Boise High School station, got a commercial license in 1922. That's over 100 years ago. And the call letters were assigned alphabetically KFAU. And later they got to one of your other stations, Kevin, KFXD, 6:30 a.m. And that was, they had a KFXA, KFXB, KFXC, and KFXD, licensed originally to Logan, Utah in 1925, and then it moved to Jerome, and then moved to Nampa in 1930. So there's a lot of history behind these stations, but KIDO actually changed call letters to KIDO in November of 1928. So in 4 years, Kevin, the call letters will be 100 years old. It's remarkable that this business is not only still around, but still leading the market and doing what it did 100 years ago, but doing it better than ever.
Well, Art will try to live up to that, and it's an incredible legacy. So, and Steve's going, he's supposed to be talking about the foundation. I know. You know how it is when we're with the media types. It's always about them and their call letters, so I apologize, Steve. Art, tell us a little bit about the foundation.
Well,
This is something that is close to your heart, to Steve's heart, to David Ferdinand's heart. You guys want to make sure that the history of radio, broadcasters, television reporters, broadcasters is remembered, is documented, and that's been easier said than done.
Right. It's so important that not only the history, but also the equipment and the many things that made broadcasting what they are, including the people and the history and the contests and the news stories and really anything that has to do with radio or TV. We want to be the repository. We want to be where it's kept or where it's stored forever. We want to be the disseminator of the information, and we want to be the promoter of off-the-air, over-the-air broadcasting as one of the greatest gifts of all, because it's totally free, and the advertisers do pay the toll. So in other words, I work at Zamzows, and I'm the guy that came up with Nobody Knows Like Zamzows, and our business is growing exponentially due to radio and television. But I did we started the History Idaho Broadcasting Foundation about 20 years ago, 2004, and really got active in 2006, and we do a monthly meeting where we get together and do a luncheon about a topic that has something to do with broadcasting. And then we also do a magazine that we call, you've heard of the soap opera, Kevin, As the World Turns?
Yes.
Our magazine is called As the Turntable Turns. And you're in the latest edition. There's a picture of you. But we also have a website that Steve has been working on, and he's going to tell you more about that. The website is historyofidahobroadcasting.org. And then we collect and have collected a massive amount of audio files, videotapes, and video of television over the years. A lot of equipment, music, a lot of even just things that are lost in time, like the NBC chimes. Do you remember when they would do NBC?
Sure.
Well, we're going to do that right now.
All right.
That is with a little chime. And
that's not a computer. That's you with the chimes.
And I can, here's the, and they had one that said the time at KIDO, 10:15. And they had one for news, too, like Kevin Miller, #1 in the ratings again. Yes, that's the type of news story we want.
I don't really think we should talk about the foundation. I like Art just talking about Kevin Miller and KIDO Talk Radio.
There you go. I think this is probably the first time, Kevin, you've had an antique xylophone in your studio.
I would agree, yes. I would agree. It's funny because we're talking about the history of broadcasters, but if you turn around there is Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he visited Idaho.
Absolutely.
And you have the big Mike flag. So for non-broadcasters, why is it important to honor them and to remember?
Well, I think broadcasting is part of our lives. And the people listening right now are being invited into their car. They're being invited into their home, their business, and you, Kevin Miller, and all the people on KIDO are part of their lives, and you're their friends. And radio also has been there, and television has been there for big events. Like, sadly, we're dealing with what's going on with the assassination attempts on, former President Trump. But I remember where I was when John F. Kennedy was shot, and I immediately went home and turned on Channel 2, KBOI TV, and there was Walter Cronkite talking about John F. Kennedy being shot and not surviving. And that will never go away from my mind. And radio and TV have been there for the big moments of people's lives. The music that has been played over the years, in many cases, is memorized in your head, even though you may not have heard that song for 50 years, you can still repeat the lyrics because audio is processed in a different part of the brain than video is. And our memory of audio is incredible. And the amount of jingles, the amount of commercials, the amount of old radio programs we have is incredible and would take you back in time to wherever you want to go. We could take you to that day.
And even on a national level, look at how culture has influenced the media and how media has influenced culture. Look at how the technology has advanced. Look at how music has changed, from disc jockeys to streaming services now. And we did a History of Idaho Broadcasting Foundation luncheon a month or two ago, in which I did a presentation on television themes that hit the top 10 on Billboard. And you can see even through the decades how that music, as I said, influenced our culture and how culture influenced the media. Because, very few TV series now have themes that you remember. I mean, when you go back to the 60s, you had, Gilligan's Island and Beverly Hillbillies and 77 Sunset Strip.
Hogan's
you don't
Heroes.
have those anymore.
Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, exactly.
The instrumental. It's funny, we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of Happy Days.
Yeah, exactly.
We played that at our meeting a couple of months ago, and it was incredible to hear Happy Days, Hill Street Blues, Miami Vice, even going back to Dragnet in the 50s and 77 Sunset Strip, and my favorite one, Hawaii 5-0, because whenever I book a radio or TV order, I always have a little clip. And the radio or TV salespeople who we just met, the KIDO staff, Betsy Boland gets to click on a little link. And when she clicks on the link, Jack Lord says, "Book 'em, Dano." And that means book the order that Art Gregory just placed.
But to hear Art talk about it, it is a magic that is challenged today. And I don't want to be negative.
And it's
but
a passion.
Yeah, it's such a passion. That's why it's great to have you both here. But sometimes we have to be the keepers of the flame, if you will. You know, let's take a look at the great Wolfman Jack.
Oh, exactly, exactly.
DJs were just so iconic back in the day.
Yeah. Larry Lou Jack.
Big Jack Armstrong here. My wife talks about when she was young that she always knew when to turn over when they were tanning because Big Jack would tell them.
Yeah, exactly.
Just, as Art said, they were friends.
Yeah.
And it's getting that back and honoring their legacy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to give you something to work with here after my thought.
For both radio and television.
Yeah, and then radio. Look at television. We all grew up with, D. Sart and Mark Johnson and so many others. Now Rick Lance is leaving.
Yeah.
You've got a newer, younger sect that has to deal with more competition than they do.
Yeah, exactly. And you have very few legacy anchors anymore. As you mentioned, D left. Rick Lance is about to retire. Mark Johnson left. Carolyn Holly is still sort of part-time. And that's only on Channel 7.
Yeah.
Channel 6, of course, Don Nelson. He's been there since the late 90s.
Now, do you want to give the disclaimer? Should I?
You can. I used to work at Channel 6.
Steve retired from Channel 6.
Yeah, I did 10 years in radio and 20 years in television.
Steve was the guy that orchestrated the news on Channel 6.
Yes,
so
all those the chess pieces on the board.
Yeah. But no, Don Nelson continues to do this, but you have to wonder. And then you guys honored this incredible duo from Idaho Falls.
Oh, yeah,
and that's the cool thing that's what I love about not bigger markets, but smaller markets. They are really the messengers of the community.
Yeah. Jay Hildebrand and Carol Honus from KIFI. They had, I think together, they probably have over 70 years in broadcasting experience. Carol and Jay, as far as we know, are the longest serving, and of course they're now both retired. They both recently retired, but they were the longest serving male-female TV news anchor duo in the history of Idaho broadcasting.
Really, I think in the nation too. There were not any others that had been together longer in the nation than them. And I was at that meeting last month, and it was incredible. These guys are so good. They are as good as anybody I've seen anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's in Idaho Falls, Idaho. So broadcasting, the bar is pretty high, actually, because we have national competition, and you have networks and Fox and, all the different radio and TV networks that are out there. And the local people, in many cases, are not only just as good, in many ways they're better because they understand the local culture and reflect it. And what I love about KIDO is you are the mirror of the community, that when you turn on KIDO, you're turning on Boise, Idaho, and this Treasure Valley. And everything that's happening in the Treasure Valley is appearing on KIDO. And it's been that way for 100 years. And you tell me one other business that's been around 100 years with the same name like that, still doing the same thing and doing it as well, if not even better, than they were doing it 100 years ago. Yeah. It just doesn't exist. And KIDO is in a class unto itself.
Well, we appreciate that. We'll try to live up to that. It's, you think about all the pioneers and again, I know we want to talk about the foundation, but and like Art, I love the radio. It's been don't tell anybody the love of my life, talk radio. But you think about the unique history of what we have here in Idaho, that this station was brought to you by kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, KDK in Pittsburgh, that was Dr. Frank Conrad from Westinghouse. However, these guys were kids at Boise High. Anyway, let's talk more about honoring broadcasters, and really, what are you guys looking for? You've got a permanent home, you're getting funding. What can we do to help?
Well, we're in the process of.
Now I keep going to Steve, and then you pitch to Art, so that's okay. It's back and forth.
I was going to loop Art back in here in just a moment, but
well, now I'm worried about Art because he's going to go back to KIDO Talk Radio, which is fine with me.
His xylophone.
Yes, and that's great, but.
Well, we're doing several things. Art mentioned the luncheons that we have every month. I'll have Art talk in a moment about the museum that we've purchased. We purchased the old KFXD radio studio building in Nampa some time ago, and again, Art can talk about that. But one thing that we're doing is we've really revamped our website to really make it a lot more user-friendly, a lot more creative and visual and colorful. And it's historyofidahobroadcasting.org. And it's got, of course, the main page, as any website does. We have a video gallery page. We've got like 5 different, we've done, probably 70 or more interviews with broadcasting legends. And we're offering 5 to begin with. We've got Dee Sarton, of course, the former Channel 7 anchor.
And we're going to hold it right there. More coming up next, KIDO Talk Radio.
Got to pay some bills.
Of broadcasting. Steve, you were talking about the Foundation's website. You were also talking about Dee Sarton. And this is a great way for people that maybe haven't been in Idaho their whole lives, or maybe they just moved here in the last 3 or 4 years, to understand really the people that have made Idaho.
Yeah, the legacy anchors, the iconic people, the kind of the building blocks of who were the media, the media building block people. But as I said on our website, historyofidahobroadcasting.org, we've started off with 5 different video clips of video interviews that we've done. You mentioned Dee Sarton. We've got Marcia Franklin, who very long time producer and anchor of Idaho Public Television, since through the Idaho history of Idaho broadcasting. And of course, Marcia was longtime host of, and still is, of Dialogue, one of the most popular locally produced programs in the state. Don Nelson, of course, legacy anchor at Channel 6 in Nampa. We also have a video segment on our webpage of the late Marty Holtman. Mm-hmm. A legend in broadcasting in Idaho. Of course, he's known for being, the weather personality of Channel 2. He was also Claude Gloom, the host of the horror movie show that went way back.
Let me just interrupt, because I wish that local television would get back to that.
Oh, exactly.
And if you ever watch the Me TV where they have the Svengoolie or whatever.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And, every town had those characters.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think
Cassandra Peterson, another one.
If people would do that today, I think that would be a draw for local television.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was kind of cheesy back then. It'd be kind of cheesy now, but it would be fun to do.
Yeah.
So we've got actually video clips that we've included with his interview on our webpage, and we've got also some guy named Kevin Miller on there as well.
You have a ton of good-looking people, and then you have Meatloaf.
But he's talking about a good cause, though.
Well, and thank you for that, and that's one of the benefits of living here in Idaho. But I have to ask you, Steve, you and Art did these interviews, and I know, Steve, you spent a lot of time writing, composing, putting this stuff together. But why did these folks stay? Dee Sarton could have left. Mark Johnson left and came back. You've got the duo in Idaho Falls. You've got other people that they made it. Unlike Kevin Miller, who came here as an old man, these folks started in their 20s and did not go to the big lights, big city, back when those jobs were the jobs to have.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, that was one of the questions when I interviewed Carol Honus from KIFI, because she had offers in larger markets. And I said, why didn't you move? There's more money. And she said, no, I like Idaho. I like the hometown feel of Idaho.
Yeah.
I like the media of Idaho. It's not as, I mean, there's competition in both radio and television here, as we all know. But it's more neighborly, I guess, if that's the right word. And it's not maybe as cutthroat as some of the major markets are. It
depends on who you talk to.
Well, that's true.
Really, when you get down to it, they are here and they are staying here for the same reason that all of us are here. It's a great place to live. You really, even though you could make more money someplace else or maybe have different atmospheres someplace else, and that may be part of the reason why you're staying. You want to be here, and these radio and TV people are giving up jobs in other markets to stay here because they like living here. And it's an incredible legacy, I think, and Carol and Jay were a good example of that. But look at Dee Sarden, and one of the people that we honored is Sal Zaleski. Sal was the news director at Channel 7 for many years and really set the standard for where Channel 7 is now as far as being the news leader. And we were there to honor Sal after he passed away. And part of what we're doing, Kevin, is if we weren't doing this, I don't think anybody else would be doing it. But it's something that needs to be done. And we've taken on the task of not only getting a permanent home in that KFXD studio building in Nampa, built in 1937, Art Deco style building. It's impeccable condition. It's great. And we're going to be doing a history and education center there. We've got the website, we've got the monthly luncheons, and we've got the magazine. So we've really got 4 big elements of what's going on. But the most important thing is to like these,
See, I told you he'd do that again.
Make sure that we've got them and they don't get thrown away, they don't go to the dumpster, they don't go to Craigslist, or they don't go to eBay, that they go to the museum where everybody can enjoy them.
Yeah, I've got a second floor of my house that has a lot of stuff. Mrs. Miller's chagrin, but she doesn't understand the what it means to keep those things, those promotional items, and everything else.
Significance, And that's one thing that we're doing with the website too, is that we're encouraging people to join us. There's certainly a join us page on the website where people can sign up and become members of the foundation, or where they can very easily donate online, because, we are a nonprofit organization. So we rely heavily on generous donations from the public. And it could be $5, it could be $500, it could be $5,000, but it all goes toward the effort of preserving the history of broadcasting, not only here in the Treasure Valley, but throughout the state of Idaho as well.
No, it's an incredible thing that is going on with History Idaho Broadcasting, and we need your help as not only a member. We've got about 170 members now, including corporate members, as which Town Square Media is one. And then we also have the magazine. You get that as part of the deal. You become a subscriber to that, and then you can donate individually. And we've actually, the biggest donation we had was from Jack Link, who worked for William E. Boeing Jr. Boeing owned KIDO for a while, from, I believe, 1959 to 1976. And we became part of the Boeing charity, and Jack had a son, Tim Link, who worked for Boeing, and he had Tim make the donation, and Boeing matched Tim Link's donation. So our largest donation to date is from Jack Link and Tim Boeing and the Boeing Company. And so we hope Boeing survives, because we'd like to get more.
Yes, I agree with you. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, real quick, because I know we're almost out of time here.
Hold on. It's never real quick with me. You just, it's just 3 people hanging out.
3 people hanging out. Yeah. Okay, that's what we are.
TV guys, they're always up to,
right.
Boom, 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 boom. Always
I've been in media for 30 years. I know you live and die by the clock. So. But not on this show. But anyway, but I wanted to make mention again, going back to our website, historyofidaho.broadcasting.org. We also have a page that lists every single, to the best of our knowledge, every single AM station, FM station, and TV station in the state of Idaho. Listed by geographic location. So if you wanted to listen to a station in Lewiston, for example, go to our website, look under AM or FM stations, look under Idaho Panhandle, and it will show you all the stations in that area. Plus, a lot of radio stations now certainly stream their signal. They aren't confined to a geographic broadcasting area. So if you wanted to listen to a station in Pocatello, go to our website, click on the link, and you can listen to whatever, station you wanted to in Pocatello. And they're all listed by format on our webpage as well. So again, that brings the media in Idaho all together as one big family per se. Because that's
it is in many ways.
A dysfunctional family. Yeah,
that's true.
You guys are like the United Nations. You got this continent over here, this continent over there,
and trying to get everybody together.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, Laura Dujak had that great quote that the lady goes to the manager of the radio station, could be Mike Owens, and says, "Sir, when my little boy grows up, he wants to be a disc jockey." And the manager looks back and says, "I'm sorry, ma'am, he can't do both." And there's a lot of truth to that, isn't there?
There is.
Yes.
But it's a fun job. It's an exciting job. As we all know, it's sometimes nerve wracking and it's, long hours, but everybody loves the adrenaline rush and, everybody loves, to be not only entertained, but to be the entertainer and, the information provider.
I don't know. I like to listen.
Well, that too.
I just like to listen. Art?
No, radio and television I don't think will ever go away, particularly radio because of the power of audio. Look at what's going on with podcasts. Podcasts are radio programs.
Yeah, those punks.
Yes.
Those punk podcasting
doesn't matter what you call it.
All they do is rip us off, Art. We need to eliminate them. I'm calling for banning podcasts right now, including this show.
Any way you can get the signal out to people or get the message out to people, it's all technology. And technology changes and you can't do anything about that. You embrace it and roll with it. And if it works, great. It's going to continue on. If it doesn't work, like remember the video disc, the record that was going to be played like like an LP, and it was going to be a DVD. It didn't work. So not every technology goes. I mean, here we are now, listening to thumb drives and listening to streaming, where the CD and the DVD and the audio cassette and the tape cartridge, what was the 8-track cartridges, they've all gone by the wayside. Vinyl, ironically enough, is coming back. Go figure.
Well, guys, we appreciate this.
It's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
Have you? I don't know about you. I know Art has, but anyway. We appreciate you guys.
You know me all too well.
Well, thank you all very much. We'll have much more on this important cause on how you can honor the history of the great broadcasters, the great reporters in Idaho. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
You this hour of the program, if you're looking for new windows, especially now is the time right before the winter, and you're going, oh, my windows are great. Yeah, it gets a little chilly, it gets a little hot. Trust the pros at Window World, windowworldboise.com. Please tell them Kevin Miller sent you. Got a lot to do today. Our great friend Mike Tracy is joining us. Do want to thank Steve and Art again for joining us as well. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And Mike Tracy will join us next hour. Looking forward to that tomorrow. Boise State Athletic Director Jeremiah Dickey will join us. Congressman Russ Fulcher and political analyst Peter Thiel.
Are off now than they were 4 years ago.
Remember this question that was asked by the anchors at ABC News? And it was, and again, the old people, I love you. The young people, please go to YouTube. Please go to YouTube and watch some great Reagan clips. But, there you go again, Mr. Such and Such, I paid for this microphone. But the greatest line of all time, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? So yesterday, the National Association of Black Journalists had a panel. Remember, Donald Trump was there. It was a big meeting. Now the vice president's there. She's answering the question. And once again, the ne'er-do-wells and the liberal media are like, well, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? How do you answer that? Because Is there anybody, unless you're addicted to the stock market? Now, if you're a stockbroker, I guess you would say you're better off now than you were 4 years ago, except you're still paying more for homes and everything else, right?
So when we came into, well, first of all, let me just say it is good to be with the National Association of Black Journalists, and I thank you for the work you do and that your members do every day. It is very important that we ensure that this organization and your members always have the resources and the platforms to deliver the voices that must be heard. So I thank you for hosting me today. 4 years ago, when we came in during the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. We came in during...
I'm sorry to interrupt the flow. In my lifetime, the worst unemployment since the Great Depression was the Great Recession, which happened, unfortunately, at the end of the Bush administration. The unemployment that we faced during COVID was a soft landing because everybody got paid not to work. You know that. I know that. There are a lot of people that unfortunately chose not to work, bought a bunch of video games. The stock of Netflix went through the roof, and away we went. Inflation was at an all-time low. Gas was at an all-time low. Everything was great. So they're not going to fact check her. They don't really care what we say in Idaho. However, you got to be kidding me.
Worst public health epidemic in centuries. We came in after the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And a lot of it due in large part to the mismanagement by the former president as it relates to COVID and obviously January 6th. And we had then a lot of work to do to clean up a mess. As of today, we have created over 16 million new jobs, over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. We have the lowest black unemployment rate in generations. We have invested in small businesses, and they're to the benefit of many people, but including black small businesses, some of the highest rate of creation of new black small businesses in years.
Yeah. But if you're a Democrat, an alarming number of black men, primarily younger black men, voting for Donald Trump? Because they remember that their livelihood, their income potential, was a lot better under Donald Trump. And whether you're a skilled person in the labor force or whether you're an unskilled person in the labor force, the Biden administration embracing wholeheartedly the illegals coming in and replacing American workers is alarming and an incredible mismanagement. People aren't stupid. When they see their jobs being taken away because you can get cheap, legalized, illegal foreign labor, they're not dummies. There are no dummies in America. Even the liberals are not dummies. And when she talks about the pandemic was done. Like the vaccine or not, and remember, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, because they didn't want to tip the election, didn't announce that the cure for COVID had happened. They didn't share that with anybody, did they? Until after the election. Now, if it had been Harris or Biden, they would have shared that. The facts are so bad. You know, how would have I answered that question? Look, we're on a roll. We've had some rocky times, but America is still that house on the hill, that city on the hill, and we're making progress. But here it's projection. It's like a little kid, or it's like when you're in trouble. And look, we're all constantly in trouble. And what do? You project, you throw it off on someone else. We had to do this. Okay, you had January 6th. That was a bad day in American history. The COVID crisis was simply done. The vaccines, and remember, it was Joe that was making people take the vaccines, not President Trump. And when we're talking unemployment, look, I would admit if I'm wrong. I'm not wrong about that. You remember the Great Recession. That was horrible. You had, it's such a contrast. And I will say this, and, we go back and forth here on KIDO Talk Radio all the time, but the trust that the management of this station had in me and that company at the time to hire me to come in when there were no jobs, there were cul-de-sacs that were not finished. There were cul-de-sacs, as you know, throughout the state of Idaho that had maybe a house on them or half-built homes because it was done. And I will always be grateful for the people that brought me here because they believe in you and this audience and developing a community. But for you to say that you've done this, and this, remember, 6 months ago, they were going to boot her from the ticket because she was, quote, a bad call at the line of scrimmage. And I know I drive Mark, the watchdog of Eagle, crazy with this. We have to spell out the facts. We can't sit there and rip everybody all the time. It's great to do that. But simply, when you go to the store and it's $30 for 2 items, that's what they call hyperinflation. On the other hand, we have people that like Taylor Swift that are all about her and think that she's the greatest ever.
Taylor Swift comes out against Trump.
By the way, this is from a Netflix documentary. Now remember, Taylor Swift is about 35, one of the most astute business people of all time. By the way, we'll tell you a little bit about this. This is where she loses it on Donald Trump. And this is from 4 years ago. We'd love to get your feedback. 580-5436, 580-KIDO concerning, are we better off? Is there anybody out there that can answer that question? Maybe Mayor McClain. She's better off now than she was 4 years ago. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Why she's moved to Idaho and left that state that shall not be mentioned behind. Those stories and more on our website, KIDOTalkRadio.com. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. It'd be nice if for once we had one of these Hollywood people that loved America as much as we do. So there's a Netflix documentary footage that has been leaked concerning Taylor Swift saying that she wants to speak out against Marsha Blackburn, the senator from Tennessee, and Donald Trump. And she's going toe-to-toe with her manager saying you shouldn't. You should be a good Swiftie and keep your political opinions to yourself. Let's take a listen.
Swift comes out against Trump.
I don't care if they write that. I'm sad that I didn't 2 years ago, but I can't change that. I'm saying right now that this is something that I know is right, and you guys, I need to be on the right side of history, and if he doesn't win, then at least I tried.
Taylor, here's the problem.
I just want to read you what I wrote, and I'm going to try to start. I just really want you to know that this is important to me.
I totally agree with the issue.
Have you heard her?
Yes, I've read the entire thing, and the bottom line right now, I'm terrified. I'm the guy that went out and bought armored cars.
I worry for her safety as much as anybody does. Maybe more. It really is a big deal. She votes against fair pay for women. She votes against the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, which is just basically protecting us from domestic abuse and stalking. She thinks that if you're a gay couple, or even if you look like a gay couple, you should be allowed to be kicked out of a restaurant. It's really basic human rights, and it's right and wrong at this point, and I can't see another commercial and see her disguising these policies behind the words Tennessee Christian values. Those aren't Tennessee Christian values. I live in Tennessee. I am Christian. That's not what we stand for. I need to do this. I need you to forgive me for doing it, because I'm doing it.
Yeah. By the way, a fascinating story about Taylor Swift's dad, Scott Swift, played football for a year in Hawaii. And the reason why that's important is he figured out that he wasn't going to be a very good college football player. And you don't have to read the book Outliers or Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell to understand there is always a purpose and a reason why people achieve what they do. Did you know that Bill Gates, when he was a young Bill Gates, there weren't a lot of computers back in the day, but his school actually had one of the first computers, and it was near a university. And thus, without that introduction to that computer, we might not have had Microsoft. We might not have had William Gates. Taylor Swift, her father, a renowned financial guy, a big money guy, a brilliant guy, Scott Swift, from what I understand, reading the profile in the Wall Street Journal. So when Taylor, at a very young age, was living in Pennsylvania, she convinced the family to move to Tennessee and started writing songs and everything else as a little kid. Very gifted at that. Very gifted. An incredible entertainer. And that's her and her father going back and forth. And you can hear her crying and responding that she wants to attack Marsha Blackburn and she wants to attack Donald Trump. And you think to yourself, as her father is saying, this isn't good for business. And maybe it is because the woke people will buy that stuff. Maybe the conservatives won't, but that she can't see the other side. You listen to these things, and Donald Trump doesn't want to ban these things. Donald Trump is not a bad guy, but when you get your stuff, and remember, dear friend, that the majority of this audience grew up reading newspapers. And if you ever talk to somebody that worked at a newspaper, there's a tremendous amount of pride in those people that read newspapers. And I know many people, Gen Z or the millennials, go, ooh, yuck. Why would you do that? It's so antiquated. The newsprint. Oh, it's so 19th century. You're right. But remember, you're talking about a day before word processors, a day before the Hemingway app or Grammarly. Oh, I could never survive that. Where you actually would, if you misspelled something, you would go look at it in a book, look it up, and then use something called typo or whiteout to get rid of the typo and retype it. Some people older used manual typewriters. So there was a higher level of cognitive ability just to do basic tasks. And then you didn't have a computer laying out the quote-unquote newspaper. You had somebody physically do this, and they had to get the columns correct and everything else. And you're going to go, Kevin, you're boring me. But what I'm saying is that you had people that would read. And today that's not the case. Today, and God bless you if you're a young person listening to this program, you are truly an outlier. But the idea that I'm sure Taylor Swift is highly educated, but you get your feeds from videos and TV, you're getting one side of the perspective, social media especially, because whether you're in the gun industry or the conservative industry, you're going to, you are shadow banned. They're weighted against you. So Ms. Swift is not going to get the type of information that you or I would get, or by somebody that reads the National Review or the Atlantic. And this is the consequence. And we're talking about the most famous star going right now is getting so emotional involving a candidate that she's only seen ads about. I've known Marsha Blackburn for years since I worked in Nashville. An outstanding lady, a great conservative. But you can hear the emotion in this when, I don't know. I know Marsha Blackburn goes to church. I'm sure Taylor Swift does as well. But to profess these values, it's not moral relativism when it comes to faith. These are the beliefs, and if you are a believer, you follow them. If you're not, then you make it up as you go. Kevin Miller in the morning, we get ready for the Knowledge Man, the Heat. Our political insider, Mike Tracy, next. Kevin Miller, good morning. Then a pager. We'll explain next. Our great friend Mike Tracy joining us. The political analyst, insider, provocateur. As always, Mike, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. It's always good to be on the air with you, and I really respect your listeners and try to bring something that might be useful to them in all the political and other kinds of topics that we cover, but usually it's a lot on politics.
Well, we appreciate that, and obviously you're always about helping people and making a difference. So the big story over the weekend, you have people that are very upset, and maybe you've seen this. And Mike, this is what I love about you, that you've seen the sign wars come and go where people tear down signs and rip up signs, and people have taken to social media, rightfully so, saying, hey, people are tearing down our signs, talking about the dangers of Prop 1. What do you make of the sign challenge where people are ripping down signs?
Well, that that happens in all campaigns. It's just called sign management. When one sign goes down, you put two more in its place, and that's kind of the strategy you have to have, and just figure that into and bake that into the campaign strategy, that you're going to have people manage, especially critical sign locations. Like one of those locations is out here in Meridian, at the corner of Eagle and Fairview, and that particular intersection gets tens of thousands of cars by it every day, except potentially Sunday. But it's a high volume place, and that's where the bigger signs usually go up first, and we're already seeing those out there. So it's signage going down and getting torn down. Now, if stuff ends up being taken down, you also have to check with ITD and ACHD, because there may have been some improper way that the sign was put up, and so it might be taken down by ACHD or ITD and ends up in their I guess their refuge pile back at their home base, and you can go find those if you need to.
I love that, sign management. By the way, Mike Tracy, if people want to get a hold of you for marketing, consulting, what can they do?
All they got to do is give me a call at 208-863-3940. I'm always happy to help campaigns and political campaigns of all types. And I obviously focus on Republicans, but there's a lot of groups out there that are doing a good job right now in going after this ranked choice voting.
Well, I was going to ask you, let's delve a little deeper into that. How do you think that campaign's going? Obviously, we believe the people that want to keep Idaho's process the way it is are going to be outspent big time. So, if you were managing keeping ranked choice voting out of Idaho, what would you be doing?
Well, first thing, you got to raise money. You have to have money for it, and then I'd probably hire a company that can do the really good social media material and really work the social media aspects of and getting texts out to people, really good website ads, all the different things that you can use out there now, and make sure that those things are done. And I've got a couple of guys that I work with and that have done a great job for me and won a lot of campaigns. And so you really need to have, first thing is you need to raise money, and you also need to have a good message. And there's already groups out there that have really good messages. There's one out there called IdahoFairElections.com, and you can see what they're doing. And they've got some really good stuff going on. I met with those guys a couple of weeks ago, and then there's a couple of other Idaho-based opponents of ranked choice voting, and they're out there getting active and raising money, and that's what it takes. It takes money, and it takes a good targeted approach to reach those likely voters.
Well, and again, that's easier said than done. Now, if you are running the campaign to bring in ranked choice voting, obviously we're hearing there's ads on TV now. They're going to have a lot of money to spend, but does money win elections?
Not necessarily. Some campaigns are outspent as much as 10-1, but if it's a bad idea, if the idea is bad enough, and this ranked choice voting is bad for Republicans, Democrats, independents. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming that ranked choice voting is not a good approach for voters. It really takes away from the control of Idaho voters and puts it in the hands of operatives. And we can't have that. And again, grassroots efforts are out there already working on this, and there's a lot of them doing a really good job. But yeah, you're right, Kevin. There's going to be a lot of money spent, and by the time this is all over with, who knows how much will be spent from out of state? It's going to be a lot, because these people, have operated in Colorado, California, Alaska, but they've built up a war chest, and Idaho's their next pawn in their game of political chess.
Yeah, our great friend Mike Tracy joining us, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Mike, let's expand upon that because you've bought ads, you've developed ads, you've written ads, so you know what it's about. Are you comfortable with the amount of outside money that is starting to trickle into Idaho? What does that mean for the regular folks like us?
Well, what it means is somebody on the outside is trying to control what's going on in our state. And I do get tired of out of state money being spent. I mean, as it goes with any campaign, money comes from anywhere. People who are donating money for these various causes don't always pay attention to how the money is being spent once they donate it. And it's just really frustrating to see out-of-state money come in and be such a significant part of something like this. And, hopefully the people here in Idaho that are fighting this, and there may be money come from out-of-state to help fight this as well. Because ranked choice voting is going to be bad for everybody. It's expensive, it's time-consuming, it reduces individual voting power, and the out-of-state money people do not care if these things happen. Everybody who's anybody in Idaho opposes ranked choice voting. It's only the people who have, when they were doing their signings, getting the signatures that they needed, they were essentially making things up to get people to sign their little pads of paper where they get the signatures they need. It's an imperfect process, but it's worked for us for a long time. We can only just be hopeful that, as when November 6th comes around, that RCV has been voted down.
Our great friend Mike Tracy joining us, talking politics here on KIDO Talk Radio. So, Mike, what happens if ranked choice voting is approved?
Well, I'm not sure because it would go to the state legislature because it was mandated by the voters, and then they would have to figure out a way to implement it, which would be expensive and time-consuming. It would completely upend the way we vote for people. And, the ranked choice could exclude Democrats from even being on the ballot with ranked choice voting. So, I don't think the Democrats want that to happen. And the same is true in blue states. Republicans are not in California, sometimes don't even get on the list because it's such a heavily blue state. And that's the real danger here is, okay, how do you implement this? We haven't changed our voting laws forever. I mean, we've gone to a caucus in 2012, and we just had a caucus again here in 2024. I personally like the primary better, but if the party votes to have the presidential caucus, that's fine by me. I've seen it work and not work. I worry about people who can't get to the polls that day. Seniors may not be able to get there. Military personnel might not be able to get there with a primary. But with ranked choice voting, a lot of the power is taken out of the hands of voters and put into the hands of operatives. So I'm not sure how the legislature implements this. That's a question that we're going to have to wait for and hopefully not have to answer on November 6th.
Our great friend Mike Tracy joining us, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, talking about ranked choice voting. How tough is it in politics to get along with someone that you don't agree with?
It can be challenging. As you know, I worked for U.S. Senator Larry Craig, and he was very good at working with the other side of the aisle. In fact, in leadership, he was designated by the majority leader at the time, Trent Lott, to be the key person in the United States Senate to reach across the aisle to the Democrats. And he was very effective at it. And in fact, got Ben Nighthorse Campbell of Colorado. They became good friends. And Ben wanted to become a Republican, and Larry walked him through the process to changing over. So the Democrats really trusted Larry, and that's what it takes, somebody like that knows how to reach across the aisle, and there's plenty of people out there in both parties. Unfortunately, it's the people who want to stir up trouble that want to that want to be in charge and want to get the time coverage on the news. And that's really frustrating for the average viewer or the average consumer of news. They don't know where to turn. So,
and that's why we turn to you, our great friend Mike Tracy, joining us here. You know, Mike, it's interesting. The reason why I ask you this, there's a piece published by the Idaho Capital Sun. And here's the headline. Of course, headlines are, it's what you make of them. But among Idaho lawmakers, it's Freedom Caucus versus Freedom Caucus. The coalition of conservative Idaho legislators has fractured, and its brand is heading for a custody battle by somebody by the name of Daniel Waters. So when I asked you that question, I was leading into this. When you have people that, and we'll just say with the Freedom Caucus, very conservative folks, very dedicated, and then you have divisions within the ranks, how tough is it to say, we agree, we need to get along for the good of the cause, or you have these purity tests. You've been in the thick of it. You just described what it was like for Senator Craig and Senator Nighthorse. What do you think is going on behind the scenes behind this headline? What do you make of it?
Well, it's a good question, Kevin. What I see happening is this splintering started happening in 2009 when Larry Craig left office. He was the tacit leader of the Republican Party, and he held all those factions together. And since 2009, we haven't had somebody who's been able to bring all these different facets together. So I guess the bottom line is that we need to find somebody who can bring all those different fractured groups to come all under one umbrella, because they really have divided into a lot of different factions. There's a lot of people calling themselves conservative that really aren't so conservative, and I run into them from time to time. They're a lot of times they're just plain old rhinos calling themselves conservatives, and you need to have somebody from the top come in and really take charge. And one person who I see being able to do that right now is someone that is a lot like Larry Craig, Russ Fulcher, from the first CD. And he's in a unique position to help bring together all the different parts of the Republican Party. He seems to be able to tap into all kinds of Republican voters, moderates, conservatives, ultra-conservatives, moderate to conservative, that middle group. He appeals to everybody, and that's one of the things I like about Russ is he's been able to draw those different factions together, and when you see factions breaking apart and all kind of getting under one umbrella, that's what I'm looking for. I hope that happens. But Russ is just one example of how it can be done. And Larry, he's followed a lot of Larry's, the way Larry set his office up, and he's seeing real strong support for the way he's been doing things. So I'm forever hopeful that somebody's going to emerge that was a leader like Larry Craig to lead the party again from a tacit position rather than elected position, because you don't have to be the governor or a U.S. senator to help build and develop that base. Russ has done it already it was a 5 or 6 way race. he won 53% of the vote, which was a landslide at the time. And he continues to win re-election easily. Generally, he doesn't even have an opponent. So that's what we need. We really need to have somebody that's in that tacit role. And if you can get that, that's what we need to see happen.
Mike, please stand by. More coming up with our great friend Mike Tracy, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Boise State versus Portland State will give away a pair during Clay and Buck sometime this week. Mike Tracy joining us. Tracy Consulting, all things political. Mike, again, if people want to get a hold of you, they want to maybe learn about advertising or political campaigns or talk about your adventures, what can they do?
Well, it's pretty easy. Just give me a call at 208-863-3940, and I'll be happy to help anyone that needs help with campaigns or any. I work with businesses and associations as well. So I'm always happy to help, and I've had a lot of success here in the Treasure Valley.
Well, and no one works harder than you, Mr. Tracy. So let's move along. Before we get to the national stuff, I can't resist. After this November election, again, you've been involved in running these campaigns at the highest levels. There's a couple things going on. We've talked about, we expect the governor to run for a third term. We'll see if there's a challenger. But then you have, and again, people in the politicos won't say this, but you have two senators, Senator Risch, Senator Crapo. They're up there. God bless them. They're doing well. They represent Idaho better than anybody else. But the rumor is, what happens if one of them decides to finally peace out and retire, and that would create an open seat. How would you see that playing out? Let's say if Senator Risch decided to hang it up.
Well, I could see Russ Fulcher running for a U.S. Senate seat. I could see that easily happening, and that's just what Larry Craig did when he was sitting in that seat decades ago. He came forward, and when there was an opening because Jim McClure retired, Larry ran for that open seat, and he had a primary challenger and a Democrat challenger, and he beat both pretty handily, and that's what I would see happening. There's always a crowded field for those kinds of open seats, and that's what I would see happening. I don't see Jim Risch necessarily retiring this time around. I just don't know. I'm not part of his inner circle, but Jim is a tough-nosed, hard-hitting political figure. He doesn't take crap off of anybody, and I appreciate that about him. He votes the way I want him. I would vote. The same can be said. It's true with Mike Crapo, and also with Russ Fulcher. I just see that as potentially being his next place where he could land and end up in representing the state of Idaho in an even bigger fashion.
Well, and then let's continue on with the unfettered speculation on my part, the information on your part, Mike Tracy. That would open up the first CD. Anybody jump out at you on that one?
Not right now, because there's a lot of ifs in there. But there's a lot of people out there that would throw their hat in the ring. And I'm not sure who those people would be at this point. Potentially, you see Idaho state senators and Idaho state representatives from the Idaho legislature throw their hat in the round or in the bag and really put their name in there and put it out there. And a lot of times they're just floating it to see what kind of name ID they would have, what kind of support they might have. And when they see how much support they don't necessarily have, a lot of them pull out.
Yeah, like I said, it would be very fascinating. And a final thought, and then we'll get to the debate fallout with our great friend Mike Tracy on KIDO Talk Radio. The governor, do you expect him to run for a third term? And if so, who will challenge him, if anyone?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, Butch did it effectively, but I think if Brad runs for a third term, he's going to have competition again, because there's a lot of people out there that would like a more conservative person in that seat. and Brad has been more of a middle-of-the-road moderate rather than a conservative. And people always tout being conservative by this vote or that vote or signing this bill or signing that bill. But you have to do more than that. You got to walk the walk and then also talk the talk. And, you know, everybody's good at talking, but walking, we're all good at talking, Kevin. But when it comes down to, when it comes down to the vote or the really tough things, walking that walk that can be much more challenging. And if somebody's voting your way most of the time, 80% plus or 90% plus, it's kind of hard to take them out. So I would be cautious to try to predict what Brad's going to do. I mean, like I said, Butch did it effectively before Brad, but I haven't seen anybody else be able to do it the way that Butch ought to. He was highly popular. I guess Brad's last vote total in the last election cycle, he got 60% of the vote, if I remember correctly. And, you know, that's a pretty strong number, but that doesn't mean that that'll carry over for a potential third term.
Well, and then you look at the challenges in the primary, you know, anybody jump out at you that way in this alleged speculative gubernatorial matchup?
Well, you can see someone like Dorothy Moon challenge him. You can see somebody like, you know, Ed Humphreys might throw his hat in the ring again. I'm not sure. He put in a brutal campaign schedule for a year and a half, and I helped him with that campaign, and he came up short, but he did good for a first-timer in a political campaign. And, you know, he's a very young man. He's got a very bright future ahead of him. And, you know, there's a lot of people who have been consulting with him to let him know that he did a great job. And they loved watching him as a driving force and someone who really worked hard in a campaign.
No, and I, you know, we reached out to Ed a few times because, you know, we're always looking for content. Let me, one more question about Ed Humphreys, because you worked with him closely. Can you describe for us civilians, the stress involved to do what Ed Humphreys did, which is to give up your job and just go all in using your own money, your own time, your own resources, not getting paid, but truly living the dream, living on the prayer? That has to be incredibly stressful, not only for the operatives, but for the candidate.
Well, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, Kevin. He worked harder than up to, really for a year and a half. He really worked hard. Not only that, but he came up with about 11% of the vote, and he didn't just use his own money. In the first 60 or 90 days, he raised $200,000 in contributions. And for a new person into politics, that's staggering. That is not anything to sneeze at. It's pretty impressive.
Speaking of impressive, our great friend Mike Tracy joining us. So, Mike, obviously your reaction to another attempt on Donald Trump's life.
You know, the rhetoric is so heated, and every time they call him a threat to democracy, they don't even have it right. It's a representative republic. It's not a democracy, but that's the phrase they like to use. He's an existential threat. And, you know, he's standing there over everybody, and he's a threat to all humanity. The hyperbole coming out of the Democrat Party and coordinated.
Choreographed. Yes, I struggle with words myself. No worries, Mike.
Choreographed and coordinated with the mainstream media. That, you know, they repeat the same slogans that the Democrats do. It just sounds like an extension of the Democrat playbook. And, you know, Donald Trump has only gotten, he's gotten 93% negative coverage, and Kamala Harris has gotten 100% positive coverage. She just never gets any negative media coverage. And this attack on him, this second attack, is staggering. It really is. I mean, we haven't seen anything like this since Gerald Ford, and nobody. I mean, both of those situations could have turned out much worse. Fortunately, there were a lot of people on the ground who made up for the mistakes of the people who were laying these events out, and they needed to pay attention. But a very bright young Secret Service officer saw that muzzle in the fence line and immediately engaged and got the president out of harm's way immediately. And I think he had his granddaughter with him too, and because they love to play golf together. That's Don Trump Jr.'s daughter, who spoke at the Republican National Convention. So I think, it's unconscionable for the media to blame Donald Trump for his own assassination attempt. That's ludicrous at the very beginning, and at the end of this whole conversation, it is beyond my wildest imagination that somebody could blame him for an assassination attempt on his own body. That just doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make up, and the people of America, the voters, they don't believe that either. And that's one of the reasons I think Trump's going to win. 2 assassination attempts, it could be anybody, and he is fighting them off, well, like a boxer or like he's in a kickbox ring. He's taken on all comers, including the people with the guns. He's pretty impressive in the way he just steps right back into the arena.
As are you, Mike Tracy. We appreciate your insight and you taking the time and the research you put into our segment every week. People want to get a hold of you. What can they do, sir?
Oh, I thank you for that, Kevin. It's 208-863-3940, 208-863-3940. Just give me a call, Mike Tracy. I'll be happy to help.
And your website?
Website, tracyconsult.com, tracyconsult.com.
Appreciate you. Take care, Mike.
Thank you, Kevin. Talk to you next week.
Yes, sir. Our great friend Mike Tracy, Kevin Mill in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Some Fox News concerning all things political, all things economical with our great friend Mike Tracy. Phone numbers here, 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Hard to believe that this guy is 53. Hard to believe that one of the most successful rap entrepreneurs now will most likely go to jail for the rest of his life. Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, P. Diddy, if you will, allegations against him. Now, just because the government charges you, does not give you a $50 million bail, does not let you out, and has an incredible amount of witnesses, doesn't mean that you're guilty, but it isn't looking good. By the way, when people are trying to make the claim about Jeffrey Epstein and hanging out with Bill Clinton, those things go away, but people try to attack Donald Trump for his character and who he hangs out with, and trying to make the connection that Trump was in on the Epstein thing, where we all know that Bill Clinton was very pally with deceased Jeffrey. What about the Democrats? The Democrats, they never bring anything up, but we did have a hip-hop president. I don't think that George Bush was a hip-hop president. I don't think that Donald Trump was. Certainly not Joe Biden, although he did a mean dance during Kwanzaa. The only hip-hop president that we had would have to be Barack Obama, because he was very much a part of popular culture, whether it was basketball or anything else. He was one of those folks that hung out with the big people. And as I said, if we're judged by the company we keep, here is P. Diddy with the former president back when he was the president.
Want to be the president of the United States, you call your man, call MTV. We're going to give you a platform. We're going to give you a way to speak because you on to something, kid. Well, you on to something. You making sense to me. You got me. I am franchised. I'm not disenfranchised no more. And we're going to keep it nonpartisan, but we got to applaud when somebody's making sense. Because we've been all around, all over, speaking to politicians, and this is what we call real talk. This is what Pete. Now y'all understand why we vote. We're going to edit everybody else ass out and just run his
Yeah, there you go. Y'all. Thank you. And I just want to say how much I appreciate Puff Daddy for doing the kinds of work that he's doing, because he doesn't have to do this. But this is part of what is important about giving back.
We applaud you, and I want to apologize for not sweating, but I do this so much. I'm so cool. I just want y'all to see everybody I'm interviewing is sweating. I'm not even touching my brow. I'm so cool.
Well, he's cool now in the clink. This has been going on for years, and unfortunately, Mr. Daddy or Mr. Diddy or Mr. Puff didn't settle with his former acquaintance, companion, partner. She sued, and in part of her suits, labeling incredible allegations of sexual slavery, of freak dances, of all sorts of things that the good people of Idaho don't talk about. Sex trafficking as well. Illicit drugs. In fact, when as they called it, the Popo went to get P. Diddy, the Popo found bags and bags of pink powder. Now, pink powder, apparently it could be ecstasy. Could be something else. It could be his bath powder. I don't know, but if you're judged by the company you keep, that clip should be going viral. Let's go to Jim and Star with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Kay Swayze. How are you doing?
Just trying to decipher the P. Diddy clip.
Well, it doesn't strike me as odd that you play that right before I come on the air. I've gone down all the rabbit holes on that story way back when it broke, and the reason being is I personally have a belief that hip-hop is definitely a big component to destroying the inner cities and to really giving a bad influence to the young men and women that grow up, idolizing those people. And man, the stuff that Diddy is accused of doing, it's some of it is with legendary musical, talents that everybody knows, like Justin Bieber and Usher, when they were young, impressionable teenagers, and the things that they were allegedly had done to them. It's disgusting. And I don't think Diddy's going to see the light of day. I think he'll just be like a, Cosby, stuck in jail for almost eternity.
Well, and look, even old Cosby got out, but I don't think Diddy's going anywhere.
Yeah, I think Cosby got he's at that age, he's half demented, let's let him live a couple years outside of jail. Cosby should have never got out, but, P. Diddy's a weirdo, and he used and abused people, according to these documents and statements from multiple sources, and victims. So, he's going to get what he deserves, and if he didn't do it, then he won't get what he deserves. But hey, that is his deal, and he's got to come up and face the Big Daddy and see what happens. So I would never listen to him. I never liked him from the beginning, and I've always thought he was a very arrogant, snobby, just a thug, just a punk. And I just don't like that, and I don't like that influence. And when we listen to music in our day, that was from, if you want to call it, the early rap. That stuff was fun, and it wasn't set up to dehumanize people and denigrate women and talk about guns and shooting and killing, and it wasn't like that. I mean, I like big butts, and I cannot lie. I mean, that was a fun song, Sir Mix-a-Lot. I mean, that was what it was then, and it turned into this ugliness that is so bad for the culture. But if you don't mind, I would like to get to a mutual friend of ours and some comments that he made yesterday on your show.
Well, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. And this would be regarding Tea Party Bob, who I have tremendous respect for, and it goes without saying, the guy is he's solid. And I heard what he said about my comments and a couple others that had called, and we're soft, we're weak, what's wrong with us? And I want to just reiterate and hopefully get him fired up again, because, that was one of his best calls in years, because Bob nothing was scripted. He went straight off of emotion, and he responded based off of, what he had going inside, and it was truly one of his best moments, even though he was taking a jab at me, and that's okay. But what I'm saying is this: and I mean the American people. I don't mean Republicans and conservatives. I mean America, our country. We need Trump to win, and if like a guy like Dave Petzo says things that a lot of people know are true, and Trump could just custom tailor his delivery a little bit better and soften his approach in certain areas. We know he's an alpha. We know he's the man. But that saying, we got to win. This country has to win. If we lose this election this time, we've said it before, and we've all been scared and worried. But if Trump doesn't take the presidency this time, Kevin, boy, oh boy, I don't know what we're going to all do, but it's going to be a real different world for all of us from that day on. And that's what I was trying to say. I wasn't trying to say Trump needs to be a wimp. No, be a man, be an alpha, but stop the measuring contest. My boat's bigger than yours. You stop that. We just need to win this so the country can turn around, and the young up-and-coming people in this United States of America could hopefully have a chance, because if he doesn't win, man, it's a disaster. I mean, it's a virtual disaster, and I've been told by my family and good friends, don't make yourself go crazy. Lean on the Lord during these times, because I just keep thinking, man, if it doesn't turn out like that, we're in big trouble. And I know you've got to agree with me on that.
I know Tea Party Bob is moving to Wyoming. I don't know where everybody else. I really have nowhere else to go. No place else will have me. So I'm here. But there are. I mean, I totally agree with you. The challenge will be if Harris decides to continue what Joe Biden has done, is target Idaho.
Yeah, it's a scary thought, and that's funny that you said, because of course you asked Bob what he's going to do, and that's what he said, and you're like, why there? He's like, I got to get out of here. And hey, look, 20 years ago, roughly 20 years ago, maybe a little over now, my family and I came here, and we came here for a reason, to get rid of all of the stuff that California had going on, and we didn't want to raise our child in an environment that was gradually going from stage 2 to stage 3. And now, California has been at stage 4 cancer and just, on life support for so long. And, I don't want to leave the Treasure Valley. I don't want to do what Bob may be doing, but you never know. We could have that talk after Election Day, and maybe things will be a little different. Maybe we want to be in the wild, wild west on 100 acres away from everybody. It's hard to say.
Jim and Star, always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you.
You too, buddy. Take care.
Our great friend Jim and Star, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
I noticed Mr. Tracy mentioned that there were some Democrats that could possibly oppose the ranked choice voting, but if the North End is any indication, the Democrats there seem to be solidly lined up between Proposition 1 on it in terms of their yard signs and support. And you see quite a few Democrat support, like, for instance, Democrat signs for Walz and Kamala across the property plus Proposition 1. So the Democrats are showing some sign of supporting this across, and I suppose it's going to be probably statewide, just not just necessarily confined to the Boise North End. If this thing passes, I think that the legislature should move to repeal it in the next session if it comes down to it. And we have.
Hank, let me hit you with this one here real quick. If you were a Democrat, how would you take down the Idaho Republican Party? What do you think their plan is? Because you're right, going to the legislature, it's always our backstop because we have the votes. But if you're a sneaky, freaky Democrat, you got to figure out how do you erode the backstop.
Well, I think it's the ranked choice voting because it dilutes. Well, I'll give you an example. But in Alaska, it definitely was the key factor. Palin got the most amount of votes, but she lost on the ranked choice voting because their Democratic opponent got more second and third choice votes in the ranked choice voting. This is what and of course I mentioned before in previous calls that Idaho had a ranked choice thing from the years 1909 to 1921, and you can go back if you want to go to the Secretary of State's office and look up the old election returns from those years. You can see examples of how ranked choice voting worked in Idaho at that period of time, and and ironically, it was a total disaster for the Democrat Party back then. So, and we've repealed initiative petitions before. I think in 1942 they passed a $200 a month pension plan, and Governor Patolson, who was the governor at the time, asked in the 1943 legislature for them to repeal it, which they did. Now, ironically, Patolson paid a political price for it because it was a factor in his defeat in 1944 in running against Glenn Taylor for the U.S. Senate. But we've done it before, and Speaker Bruce Newcomb moved to repeal a term limit. We passed an initiative for term limits, and they repealed by initiative, and again the legislature turned around, I think around the 2001 session, and repealed term limits. So we've done it before, and I think that definitely it should be done in this instance. Or should this awful initiative wins?
Well, stay tuned, true believer. We're going to see what happens.
Okay.
Thank you, Hank. Appreciate the insight. Appreciate everybody's insight. We've got another hour to go. We'd love to hear from you at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Of course, don't forget, coming up, Clay and Buck this week, we're going to give you a chance to win a pair of tickets to Boise State's home opener against Portland State. Athletic director and all-around great guy, Jeremiah Dickey, will join us tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We're just getting started. Thank you for being on the right side. Kevin Miller, good morning. 580-KIDO. Thank you all for joining us as we're moving along, taking your calls about the issues that matter to you. And certainly there's a lot that's going on. That's why we love hearing from you. As we, what's the old adage? Making sense in a senseless world. And who would have ever thought that the Israelis would be so ingenious with the pagers? Now, they've denied that the Palestinians and the Hamas people and everybody else, because you have the grand Ayatollah, the guy from Iran, going, let's make sure that, we don't use phones, because the West can tap the phones, so they go to the pagers and they blow up the pagers. Here is our own Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, saying, we didn't know anything about it.
So with regard to Lebanon, the United States did not know about, nor was it involved in these incidents, and we're still gathering the information and gathering the facts. Broadly speaking, we've been very clear, and we remain very clear, about the importance of all parties avoiding any steps that could further escalate the conflict that we're trying to resolve in Gaza, to see it spread to other fronts. It's clearly not in the interest of anyone involved to see that happen. And that's why, again, it's imperative that all parties refrain from any actions that could escalate the conflict. We're focused on getting this ceasefire over the finish line. That would also, I think, materially improve the prospects of actually defusing the situation in northern Israel and southern Lebanon, particularly creating an environment in which people have the confidence to return to their homes, the tens of thousands of displaced people in Israel as well as in southern Lebanon. Getting the ceasefire would facilitate getting to that kind of agreement, and that's clearly the best path forward for everyone involved. So, again, it's imperative that everyone avoid taking steps that could further escalate or spread the conflict.
Well, tell that to the people that are still trying to kill the Israelis and also the people that still have the hostages. Let's go to Eric in Cuna with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Eric.
Hey, good morning. Boy, that is some amazing 007 type stuff, isn't it? And of course, Israel isn't going to tell the Biden administration what's going on. Why would they tell them? And everybody, you hear him downplaying it. Hezbollah has been lobbing rockets into Israel forever. I mean, and I think that was amazing on Israel's part. The Mossad. I'm sure the Mossad was behind it. And, that was pretty awesome. But the Prop 1 is the ranked choice voting, right?
Yep.
I haven't seen the sample ballot yet. Yeah, definitely vote no on that Prop 1. And it is an infiltration to ruin our elections and to get Democrats in there. And I was thinking about something about these assassinations and assassination attempts going back to the 60s. You have John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy both got assassinated. John F. Kennedy, it's documented that he came out and said, I think it was a week or two before he got assassinated, he did say there was a group that wants to enslave every man, woman, and child. So let's just call him a threat to the cabal, the deep state, the elitist, secret circle, whoever they are. He was a threat. And then attempt on Reagan. Reagan was a threat. If you look at what Reagan did for America, and, if you just think about that, he was a threat to the deep state, and he almost died. And now, and then going up, there was nothing on Jimmy Carter or Clinton or Bush. They weren't a threat to the deep state. They weren't a threat to the cabal. And I don't know. This is all allegedly. I have no idea. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but these assassination attempts on Donald Trump, did these people act alone? I don't think most people don't believe that. There's no way. I just can't believe that they acted alone. I think they were probably coerced or brainwashed or talked into somehow, something. I don't know. But if you look at that, they are all the assassination attempts and assassinations were on people that were a threat to this secret group, this whoever they are, so it's pretty scary. And I was thinking, Donald Trump doesn't believe that Joe Biden won the last election, and neither do I. I don't believe it. If you think about it, right after Joe Biden got in, they put up a big fence around the Capitol. Now, why would they do that? Because they're afraid, because they know what they did. It's completely obvious. So I just think that if they win, and I'm praying, God is on our side. This election is clearly a choice between good and evil. But if they get in, I think that the only recourse that we have is that convention of the states. And there is a lot of pushback from billionaires and elitists and stuff like that. I've been reading a bit about it. And, they don't want that convention of the states to happen because they know there could be some serious permanent changes. So we do have that recourse. If it could happen, right? There's so many of these, whoever they are, that have been put into, maybe it started from Obama. Maybe it goes back years. I don't know. But there is a lot of these bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats that are against us, basically, that are infiltrated into every institution we have. IRS, the Department of Education. The rabbit hole. The truth is far stranger than fiction. So we just have to pray for Donald Trump, and we have to pray that, we get our republic back, and we have a real country again. I miss America, and I just don't like seeing the way it's going. Pretty sad. And I think we got a good chance with Donald Trump. You know, I mean, I don't think he's going to run again after this. And like the last caller and the last few callers are saying, what is this country going to be like if they win the election? I mean, Kamala is, you know, let's face it, she's not very smart. I mean, I saw that interview, and she said the exact same thing she did in the debate. And that guy asked her specifically, what would you do for the economy if you were elected? And she basically verbatim spewed out the same crap that she memorized for the debate. Well, let me start here. I come from a middle-class family, and people like their lawn, and I had nurses and doctors, and I had these people that were my neighbors.
She never mentions her dad, though.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was thinking that same thing. She says my mom raised me and stuff like that. Yeah, she doesn't mention her dad. And here a while back, her dad came out publicly and said something when she was talking about a race. He didn't like her saying that she was black. Because from everything I've read and understood, her dad was actually of Indian descent also, but he was just born in Jamaica. And her mom is of Indian descent. So she is of Indian descent, even though her dad was technically Jamaican, but he was of Indian descent. So, and, you know, not that race matters. It really doesn't. And I really hate the way these Democrats make everything about race. It's so shallow. I mean, you know, and when you identify with skin color and you bring it up all the time, it doesn't matter if you're white or black. You're acting racist, the way I see it. You know, what about merit? What about what you're going to do? I don't care what color somebody is. If Donald Trump was purple, I'd still be voting for him. So, you know, they got to make it about all these shallow things. And they brainwashed a lot of people. A lot of people are just buying right into her. And I just don't get it. You can't a lot of these people are just so brainwashed. You present them with facts. I mean, the truth is right in front of their nose. They just deny it. I love Kamala. Why do you love Kamala? I just like her because she's strong.
Yeah, and Eric, thank you for the call. We appreciate that because it's all about image. It's all about sizzle, not the steak. 580-5436. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Security. So the Trump security detail, Secret Service detail, as well as the Trump campaign for months and months requested more security, and this was denied by the Secret Service. They know it. I've asked the director. They've looked into it, but they haven't shared any of it with us. We know that in Butler County was the first time that they had counter snipers there. Thank God. If they had not had the counter snipers there, that shooter would have continued, and Donald Trump would have surely been killed, as well as many more people. He was taken down pretty quickly, but there was a host of errors. He never should have gotten on the roof. They saw him for 90 minutes, but never stopped the proceeding in order to interview him or interdict him. They knew he was on the roof, man on a roof, for 3 minutes. That was broadcast to the control tent, and yet Trump was still not taken from the stage. So the first assassination attempt, error after error after error, but these were errors of willpower, not manpower. Now, like Washington, everything else, somebody fails at their job, you give them more money. No, why don't we replace the people who didn't do their job and have better people in those positions?
Senator Rand Paul, Dr. Rand Paul. Did you catch what he said? By the way, good morning, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Did you hear what he said about that was the first time they had a counter sniper team at a Trump rally? Was in Butler, Pennsylvania. So, two things could have happened. The president could not have turned his head, and it would have been the Zapruder film all over again, except this time in high definition. The perp could not have been taken out because there weren't counter snipers, so he would be raining down gunfire on everyone, and no one would have been able to take him out. Like I said, there was a company in Nampa that recently had to let go people. I believe over 100 people, and I'm sorry that I didn't write a story about it because it's very important. Intuit, laying off people. These people worked hard and did everything right, and they still were let go of their jobs. A shame, a tragedy, and yet here we have people at, with all due respect to the folks in Boise and Nampa, at a much higher level that have failed to do their job continuously. And they get a big pension, they get a big benefits, they get to run around their fancy suits, and they can talk about their authority. And it's like what Rand Paul said, who the heck is watching the store? Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, saying today, well, we're gonna investigate. Really? You're a lot smarter than I am. I am not a bright person. But if I were in charge of the presidential security, there's a fence, there's the golf course, there's the highway. Let's put some people out there. Is it gotten to the point where we have to have the volunteers, the Make America Great people, the MAGA people, do the own outer rim security for the president of the United States, the former president of the United States? Say what you want. And a lot of people go that way. A lot of people will say this. Even you liberals, even Calvin and A. Bundy in America that hits us on the Yap Blast all the time, liberal Steve, whomever, you in your heart of hearts know that this is unacceptable, what they're doing with Donald Trump. Like him or not, the idea that this happened, it's not like we're not spending money on these things. The great thing about the private sector is you go to a place, you get a bad steak, you never go back again. It's like what Rand Paul said. Get them out. Replace them. Don't give them more money. I love that. Kevin, why didn't you do your job? I need more money. Okay. That's a great gig if you can get it.
So the first assassination attempt, error after error after error, but these were errors of willpower, not manpower. Now, like Washington, everything else, somebody fails at their job, you give them more money. No, why don't we replace the people who didn't do their job and have better people in those positions?
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Let's roll to Art in Star. It's been a while with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Following the news just like you do. Came across a picture that rolled out on the internet a few days ago. Don't think it's hit the mainstream. But it shows a picture of that shooter that tried to kill Trump down there at his golf course. And he's standing with the chief cook for the White House. And they're planting some kind of flags for the Ukraine. So you'll be seeing that. I managed to print a couple of those things out and pass them around town. I'd like to find a way to maybe get it on a national show like Andy or, Ingram Angle or something like that. Got to be a connection there.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Together. Well, the shooter is standing there, a picture with another individual. He is who is the chief cook for the White House, for the Biden-Kamala Harris White House.
According to who?
I don't know who took the picture.
Well, who says he's the chief cook?
Well, the person who took the picture. He's a known individual. He's the head of the food department at the White House. And
well, do we have confirmation of that, or is this just some guy on Twitter?
I don't know. I'm just telling you.
Well, but I love you. But you say you don't know, but you're repeating the story.
I'm telling you about it. You should be able to find the picture on the internet.
I'll get right on that.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to tell you.
All right, Art. Thank you. By the way, those of you that are big NBA fans, Adrian Wojnarowski has retired from ESPN. He has decided to go into the private sector, named men's basketball GM at St. Bonaventure. He's had it with the media industry. We wish him well. Back to what Art says. You have to be careful with these things. You have to be careful with these things again and again and again. Because you sit there and there's the chief cook. Oh, it's not the chief cook, but people hear it that way. And I'm sure that Laura Ingraham, Jesse Waters, our own Sean Hannity will be all over those stories if they exist. We appreciate Art. We appreciate Art bringing that up. but we must vet our sources. We can't just run and gun like the old days, although we do that a lot. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Don't forget your chance to win tickets to see Boise State versus Portland State coming up tomorrow during the Clay and Buck Show. We'll give you a chance to win tickets during the Clay and Buck Show. I'll tell you what time to listen and what hour. Could be the 10, could be the 11, could be the 12. And by the way, Kent Goldthorpe, Conversations with Kent return tomorrow at 9 o'clock with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Another clip you may hear other places. You won't hear it locally because everybody here is a Swiftie. I'm a Swiftie. Not me. Give me some Blue Oyster Cult, true believer. Here we go. This is Taylor Swift being very emotional concerning conservatives and why she doesn't like Donald Trump and why she doesn't like conservative Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee.
Comes out against Trump.
I don't care if they write that. I'm sad that I didn't 2 years ago, but I can't change that. I'm saying right now that this is something that I know is right, and you guys, I need to be on the right side of history, and if he doesn't win, then at least I tried.
Taylor, here's the problem.
I just want to read you what I wrote, and I'm going to try to start. I just really want you to know that this is important to me.
I totally agree with the issue.
Have you heard her?
The right side of history, by the way, that's her dad, Scott Swift, trying to break it down for her. The right side of history, since when do we care about what the entertainers say about the right side of history? They're sure they could charge billions of dollars and do the Eras tour and date the guy from the Kansas City Chiefs, Kelsey. But when does that make them political experts? Well, Kevin, it's the First Amendment. They can do and say whatever they want. Sure they can. Okay, that's great. That's fun. That's exciting. Are you kidding me? I'll just go back to you're just going to shake it off. Shake it off.
I've read the entire thing, and the bottom line right now, I'm terrified. I'm the guy that went out and bought armored cars.
I worry for her safety as much as anybody does. Maybe more. It really is a big deal. She votes against fair pay for women. She votes against the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, which is just basically protecting us from domestic abuse and stalking. She thinks that if you're a gay couple, or even if you look like a gay couple, you should be allowed to be kicked out of a restaurant. It's really basic human rights, and it's right and wrong at this point, and I can't see another commercial and see her disguising these policies behind the words Tennessee Christian values. Those aren't Tennessee Christian values. I live in Tennessee. I am Christian. That's not what we stand for. I need to do this. I need you to forgive me for doing it, because I'm doing it.
Daddy's little girl. Let's go to the pro-life with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, pro.
Yeah, good morning. Taylor Swift, you can tell what her motive is. She wants to be on the right side of history. Now, she doesn't want to be on the right side of Jesus Christ and Heavenly Father. She believes that the civil rights for LGBTQ is real Christianity. She's just a popular prostitute, I guess you'd say. And so she's just going to try to mesh in with where she thinks history is going to wind up. But her motive is wrong. And because of that, she can't see the truth. So anyway, that's my comment about her. But what I called in is to talk about President Biden and the assassination attempts. Now, President Biden is definitely pretty out of it, and he's being used because the president has resources that like nobody on earth. He could cause the Trump team to just be totally protected. He could put the SEAL teams in there. He could call for people all over the federal government to go and help the Secret Service protect the president. He didn't do that because his handlers didn't tell him to do that. Because if President Trump does get assassinated, then it's not on the handlers
that they did that. It's on President Biden's head that he was stupid enough not to protect President Trump, and so he's being totally used. And I just can't believe that his wife and him and the smartest guy on earth, Hunter Biden, isn't protecting his dad. I mean, this needs to be straightened out. It could just be by executive order. They could just have President Trump totally protected. And then they ought to fire, of course, Mr. Rowe and the people that let this happen. I mean, Mr. Rowe hasn't been just telling Biden, listen, you just give me all kinds of resources and this won't happen again. He's just going along being a dummy because he's a liberal probably. That's why he's in that position. He wants to get rid of Trump if they can, but...
Well, pro-life, we appreciate the phone call. Beacon Plumbing brings you Fox News. Stop freaking. Call Beacon today. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, Fox News Now.
The government pay for fertility treatments. So would you have voted for a bill like this if he was in office?
Well, Caitlin, first off, I have to correct almost everything you said in the lead-in there, almost none of which was accurate about this bill. First off, there's no risk to IVF in this country. All 49 Republican senators, along with President Trump, support IVF. No state restricts or bans IVF. Second, this bill was about a lot more than just IVF. You said that it had to guarantee access. Access is guaranteed in all 50 states right now. You also said that it was about IVF. It's about a lot more than IVF. This bill would mandate coverage for experimental, controversial procedures like cloning or gene editing or providing fertility treatments to men who think they're women, whatever that means. It would also imperil religious liberty. I support IVF, as President Trump does. We also think that we should allow, say, Christian hospitals to operate their affairs as they see fit, according to the dictates of their conscience. Now, it's not surprising that Democrats don't agree with that. They've long persecuted Christians, like the Little Sisters of the Poor. They wanted to provide contraception coverage for nuns.
Okay, Senator,
or they've harassed Catholics. By the way, you're listening to Kevin Miller in the Morning, KIDO Talk Radio, and this is why I've become a fanboy, and everybody should become a fanboy for Senator Tom Cotton of Nebraska. Or no, Arkansas. Yeah, Arkansas, my bad. For some reason, I'm thinking of Nebraska. Anyway, too much Matt Rule film tape. Here he correctly, with respect, pushes back against the CNN anchors' fake news. And if the CNN anchors, if the news media anchors are going to come up with the lies and perpetrate the fraud and everything else, you notice that Senator Cotton was very respectful, very much, within his rights. And it's so funny. It's very similar to what's going on in Idaho with the abortion debate. On one hand, we hear medical providers, they can't give you babies anymore. They're closing down maternity wards and everything else because of the Idaho laws and everything else, and the Supreme Court, the 11th Circuit, the 9th Circuit, and this circuit, and I'm short-circuited even just talking about it. But there's no reach out to the pro-life community. There's no reach out to the people that for years and years have been vilified, for years and years have prayed, have taken on the abortion industry. There's no other side of the story. This is brilliant, where Senator Cotton says, no, Caitlin, you're wrong. And by the way, Caitlin, he's the guy that's voting on the legislation. If he hasn't read the bill, he has people that are paid to read the bill to make sure that the bill is taken care of. So I think I would trust the senator more than I would trust you and your team of producers that have an agenda at CNN.
Traditional masses. That's what this bill is about, Caitlin. No, Caitlin, you're not going to stop me there because you're misrepresenting what the bill is about. The bill is about infringing upon religious liberty.
Let's have a conversation about this bill and this legislation itself.
Let's have a conversation as long as I can cut you off, can get in the last word, can mislead the public, can do everything else. that my progressive folks have told. By the way, let me just say this, and I don't want to let something go untouched. Pro-life's comments about Taylor Swift, those are his own personal opinions. We have the utmost respect for her. We may disagree with her, but she is not a, quote, person of the night or what have you. Again, the comments, views, and opinions are opinions, which are, in fact, protected under the First Amendment. We apologize if they've offended anybody. But again, and nobody has asked me to say this, my whole purpose is to protect the forum that we have here. And you could say things that may be in poor taste. You could say things in poor taste, but when they cross the line, we need to correct that. So again, we apologize to the Swifties and everything else. The reason why I'm saying this is we can have disagreements without going too far and attacking people's morality. Now, the liberals and everybody else can attack us, but the bottom line here is, we don't agree with that statement, and we apologize, for those people that thought that pro-life had gone too far. And again, that's me saying it. If you're Lee Joe, if you're Tea Party Bob, if you're Dr. Livingston, if you've been listening to this program, you know that is coming from me. No one has said, say this, because I would probably say somebody said to say this. Life is too short to be hung up on opinions that, again, in my opinion, cross the line. Let's get back to this because we want to, again, have the ability to have discussions at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, like we're hearing between Senator Cotton and Caitlin Collins on CNN right here on KIDO Talk Radio.
That what I said was inaccurate, that this would guarantee access to IVF, which is what it would do. You're saying that no state restricts it, but no state, guarantees it. The issue, which I know well because this happened in my home state of Alabama, is a court ruling that embryos count as children. And then these IVF clinics, a lot of them closed in Alabama as a result of this because they're worried about lawsuits or about the state attorney general coming after them. That is why this is an issue. And your candidate, Donald Trump, has said that he would like to see IVF and people have access to this. So
now you notice she keeps going on and on. When's the last time she was in her home state of Alabama? We're going to try and get to where Tom Cotton responds.
Criminal charges.
Caitlin, the example of Alabama proves my point. You had the Supreme Court of Alabama ruling on an old law. They felt their hands were constrained by a law. And what happened? The political branches of the Alabama government, who are elected by and accountable to the people, promptly passed a new law that guaranteed access to IVF in Alabama the same way every other state guarantees access to IVF. This bill in the Senate was not about guaranteeing access to IVF, which is not threatened in any state. It was about radical, experimental, controversial treatments, like things like gene editing or cloning, and it infringes upon religious liberties, which again shouldn't be surprising because the Democrats are the party that want to harass and persecute nuns or investigate Catholics for going to traditional masses. That's why we oppose that bill and will continue to oppose it.
Tea Party Bob joins us now with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Tea Party Bob.
Well, good morning, Mr. Miller. Once again, thank you for your show. At least we can listen to your show and get the real story. And I appreciate Jim's comments, as I was just a little jazzed up by some of the comments about Trump yesterday. I need to spend a few minutes on the assassination attempt. The Secret Service has known for a long time the Iranians have been looking for assassins to go after Trump, yet his security was never increased. And Secret Service Director Ron Rose says for decades they have been doing more with less. Yet the budget for the Secret Service has gone from $1.5 billion to $3.5 billion since 2000. Can somebody tell me how the Secret Service is doing more with less? The Secret Service needs a complete overhaul at the top, as this appears to be where the real problem lies, much like the FBI. And you can bet that all the top people understand that they will be out of work if Trump gets elected. So let's go through this for a little bit. Secret Service Director Rose said that they were using a new layered approach for security, and it worked so that there was no assassination. I believe it was pure luck, and the Secret Service saw the Secret Service agent saw the barrel of the shooter's gun before Trump was in sight. The big question is, why didn't the Secret Service search the perimeter of the course, as they had plenty of time? The Secret Service even knew that the shooter's position was a vantage point for the press for a long time to take pictures of the president. So if it was a good place to take pictures, it was certainly a good place for a potential shooter to hide. The real question is, has the Secret Service and DHS been infiltrated? Otherwise, how did the shooter know where Trump would be golfing as he sat there and waited, eating snacks in the bushes for 12 hours for the president to enter the target zone? So none of this adds up. Why is no one curious about the GoPro camera, as no one has said a word about it? Isn't it interesting that the Iranians who take pictures of their victims as they are in the process of killing them, maybe this was what it was for? You know, the shooter even had ceramic plates used to deflect bullets. But why wasn't he wearing them? Was he expecting a shootout with the Secret Service so that it would look like a suicide by cop? What it looks like is he chickened out at the last minute and ran. Too much doesn't make sense, just as the first attempt on Trump's life doesn't make sense. You can only play dumb for so long before the people figure out that someone isn't doing their job on purpose. Mayorkas is the one in charge of the Secret Service. He says that Trump's security has been increased to the approximate level of Biden's. Well, we're going to find out. And should there be another attempt on Trump's life, I doubt that the Secret Service will be able to talk their way out of being called totally incompetent. Actually, what they need is a SEAL team to do a better job of protecting Trump. Isn't it amazing that no one has been fired from the FBI or the Secret Service? And I can't think of one liberal news person who has not said that democracy is on the ballot. Well, democracy is not on the ballot. It is our representative republic, Tracy is right, that is on the ballot because of the deep state's fear of being exposed. And for Taylor Swift, she's too dumb to understand she has been propagandized by the education system and the media. And I wonder what her life would have been like had she been born in Russia or China. People forget how lucky they are to live in this country. I thank you very much, my friend, and I hope you have a great day.
We appreciate you, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 580 KIDO. Here we have a big hearing in the Senate yesterday where we have Senator John Kennedy going toe-to-toe with a witness. This is before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Maya Berry is the executive director of the Arab American Institute and testified about hate crimes in America. And here we have Senator Kennedy asking her about hate crimes that aren't reported.
And according to your website, you're also, I'm going to quote here, a longtime Democratic Party activist who served as a member of the 2016 Democratic National Convention's Platform Standing Committee, close quote. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You support Hamas, do you not?
Senator, oddly enough, I'm going to say thank you for that question because it demonstrates the purpose of our hearing today in a very effective way.
Let's start first with a yes or no.
Hamas is a foreign terrorist organization that I do not support. But you asking the executive director of the Arab American Institute that question very much puts the focus on the issue of hate in our country.
Well, I got your answer, and I appreciate it. What is the you support Hezbollah, too, don't you?
Again, I find this line of questioning extraordinarily disappointing, Senator.
No?
That you have Arab American constituents that you represent in your great state.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that, but my time's limited, and I apologize. But is that a yes or a no?
A yes or no question to do I support Hezbollah? The answer is I don't support violence, whether it's Hezbollah, Hamas, or any other entity that invokes it.
You can't bring yourself to say no, can you?
No, I can say no. I can say yes.
But
what I can say is your line of questioning.
Do you support or oppose Iran and their hatred of Jews?
Again?
Man, my hearing must be going. By the way, Kevin Miller here, KIDO Talk Radio. I thought he said LeBron, but no, he said Iran. And again, I'm not trying to be funny. I just thought maybe it's sports on my mind. However, you have people cheering in this hearing and going after Senator Kennedy. And at 580-5436-580-KIDO, we're going to let you decide, did Kennedy go too far? Because you have people in this country, you have people in Boise that are out there supporting the Palestinians now. Does that mean they're supporting Hamas and Hezbollah? Well, the people in the West Bank elected Hamas. You have people that know that Hamas is there, and maybe it's a simple fact that they're all innocent victims, and they're being held hostage. An incredible back and forth here on KIDO Talk Radio.
Emphasize Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas. None of them is going to this discussion.
You can't bring yourself to say no,
sir. I don't support.
It's real simple.
Excuse me. I'm going to, if I may, as a Muslim woman, sir, I'm going to tell you I do not support Iran. But what I will tell you is that this conversation.
I'm running out of time. I'm sorry. You called our decision to cut funding. You called our decision to cut fund. Well, first, what's the United Nations Relief and Works Agency?
It's UNRWA, which is the institution that exists to provide services and aid to the nearly 6 million Palestinian refugees.
And you called our decision to cut funding for them, quote, an incredible moral failure, close quote.
That is absolutely correct. But again, I would suggest that conversation is about foreign policy. We did that
because 9 UNRWA staff members were fired for actually helping Hamas on October 7th. Isn't that the case?
I don't believe that that's correct in terms
Let me ask you one more time.
So they defunded a group that was helping Hamas that the world knew about. Remember, we talked about it. And here we have, as a Muslim woman, as this woman, as that woman, as a Catholic man, whatever you want. I mean, can't we just have a discussion? Do you support Hamas? No. Do you support Hezbollah? No. Do you support Iran? No. That's all. Simple yes or no answer. But as Senator Kennedy has pointed out, she's trying to run out the clock.
Don't you? You support UNRWA and Hamas, don't you?
Sir, please. I think it's exceptionally disappointing that you're looking at an Arab American witness before you and saying you support Hamas.
You know what's disappointing to me?
I do not support Hamas. I do not support Hamas.
You don't support UNRWA. You don't support Hamas. You don't.
I was very clear in my support for UNRWA.
And you don't support Iran. You should hide your head in a bag.
I don't think he's going to get any support from Hamas or Hezbollah when it comes to his reelection. Now people are saying he went too far. You should hide your head in a bag. Wow. Never mind any of these other issues. Never mind the fact at 580-5436-580-KIDO that we have people that are supported by taxpayers in this country that are supporting the tragedy of what's going on in Israel. Those poor hostages, I would ask you to pray for them. I would ask you to pray for them that they come home. You know, we think to ourselves, what happens if we're detained or we're stuck in traffic or we're stuck on a plane? Going back to the Iranian hostages, what happens when your freedom is taken away? And the world ignores it. The world ignores it. Back to Tea Party Bob. Silence is consent. 580-5436-580-KIDO. What do the numbers 83 and 256 have in common? 83 is the number of Subaru Crosstreks at Treasure Valley Subaru, and 256 is the payment to drive a new Crosstrek from Treasure Valley Subaru. If you've never owned a Subaru, the Subaru Crosstrek is the model many people buy as their first Subaru. Road and Track describes the Crosstrek as affordable, rugged, and a fuel-efficient small SUV. The Subaru Crosstrek is also affordable than other small SUVs. Lease one for $256 a month or buy one for about $25,000 with a low 3.9 financing for 72 months. So before you buy a Honda, a Toyota, or a Kia, or other small SUVs, go visit Treasure Valley Subaru and test drive a Subaru Crosstrek. They even have an off-road test track at the dealership for you to see what it's like to drive off-road. And if you're already a Subaru owner, now's the time to take you to Treasure Valley Subaru Service Center for a free pre-winter maintenance checkup. I think they're doing that for all makes and models. And Jeremy there at the parts department did a great job with me yesterday. I needed something, and just incredible service. Were they looking for gear service? Go see our friends at Treasure Valley Subaru. It's where I go to hang out. They got a nice lounge, free snacks, free coffee, and incredible service. Treasure Valley Subaru and the Idaho Center Pre-Owned Superstore together on one giant lot at the Idaho Center Auto Mall and at TreasureValleySubaru.com. Please tell them Kevin Miller sent you. So here we have again this whole vibe, if you will, where Congress is trying to investigate things. By the way, have you heard the news? If you're listening to Fox News on KIDO Talk Radio, you know what I'm talking about. That apparently now walkie-talkies aren't safe. That's right. Walkie-talkies are not safe. So a bunch of people carrying walkie-talkies got blown up. Let's go to the App Yap Club. Eric and Payette. Hey, Kevin, me being a good independent thinking conservative Republican, I'd like to ask you how I go about getting a no prop 1 yard sign. Thanks, and kill your smartphone. Save you, me, and America. I think you just contact the state Republican Party. Eric, you're in Payette, or contact your county Republican Party. I'm sure that they have their signs, and knowing how hard they work, they might even deliver. But if not, I'm sure you can get one. Maybe I hope you don't have to travel into Boise, but I'm sure some of these local parties, the county parties, would have them if there's not a big enough city party. Back to Denver. So why didn't the Trump team put up a surveillance camera on the fence line of the golf course to monitor this issue? I don't understand why more wasn't done initially. If you know this particular area was a security witness, that's a good point, not only for the Trump team, but for the Secret Service team, for everything. You know why we don't have a lot of break-ins anymore in America? You know why we don't have a lot of crime? 10, 15 years ago in Boise, we had a bunch of bank robbers. Think about how tough it is to rob a bank these days. Now, we're not endorsing robbing a bank because robbery is wrong. Theft is wrong. Sticking somebody up is wrong. But think about this. And maybe most criminals are stupid, but some of them, as Brian and Nampa will tell us, they're very smart. You got to be a dummy to go in and try and rob a bank these days. You got to be a dummy because there's cameras everywhere. You want to break into somebody's house? You got to be a dummy. There's cameras everywhere. Cameras increase the probability that you're going to get caught. And that's a great point, Denver. Why aren't there cameras everywhere? And as we said before, where were the drones? I'm sure I can go to Radio Shack and get a couple drones and fly them over there. Or get some volunteers. Remember when we had so much disruption during the pandemic, you had people volunteering to do their own security details. Because there weren't enough police officers, there weren't enough resources. So if you want the job done right, simply do it yourself. And that's really what it comes down to. Where are the cameras? Cameras make everything acceptable and wonderful and safe. Now, they may not be able to prevent the crime, but a camera is going to make sure that the police and everybody else are going to have as much information possible. The scary thing about the world that we live in today is it goes back to Jack Nicholson and that whole A Few Good Men. I don't know if we could handle the truth. The government feels we can't handle the truth concerning JFK. They still haven't released the information. They still haven't released the information concerning JFK. They believe that we can't handle anything. So what about the assassination? We have members of the House saying they still haven't been given the correct information, which is troubling and sad. And that's why we have to continue to hold people accountable in a very, very respectful way, because if you go too far even if you're on the right side, they're going to get you. And the only people we want to get is you. We love you. May God bless you and your family. Keep the faith. Thank you very much for listening. Clay and Buck are next, everybody. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.